Live here in the Opera House. The first item on, if you have to take a call, either please mute your cell phones, or if you've got to take a call, please step outside so that we don't have to be part of it. We have no public hearing this evening. Minutes, meetings, and announcements. We have a number of minutes to approve tonight, starting with that of November 17th, the special public meeting of the Select Board, which we have before us, and it had been distributed earlier. Do we have a motion to accept?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do we have any changes, errors, omissions?
Is it just on the first one?
Yeah, this is, no, this
just the
is
first one.
November 17th.
Yeah,
We're just dealing with November 17th.
Thank you. None for that.
Nope. All right. I think we were all in attendance for that
Although it
one.
was a flash.
Yeah, we were all in attendance.
Passed.
Well, except Tracy's not here. Oh, that's right. Wait. Guess what? I just found another error.
we're in 2015.
Oh, 2015. Oh, you're right.
Went through a
You're right.
time loop.
Whoa.
A while ago.
We've run around the calendar. Okay, so you
You
weren't
haven't
there.
had me that long.
We haven't had you that, it just seems that right. All in favor of accepting? Is that abstention? It's 4-1, 4-0-1. The next one is June 27th, 2016. We were all present for this. Do I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion,
The
Yours?
page 2.
page 2.
So it could be halfway down, Randy. I
Yep.
think this is a great opportunity. Last line response has been, "What do you need, comma, chief?" As opposed to, "What, do you need a chief?"
Okay,
Comma.
Yeah,
insert comma.
just for,
Any other changes? Hearing none, all in favor? With the change, of course. The next one we have is Monday, July 11th, 2016. And again, we were all present for this. Do I have a motion?
Move to accept as presented.
second.
Moved and seconded. Changes, errors, omissions? Hearing none, all in favor? That one is accepted. Monday, September 12th. Our regular meeting of the Select Board. Do I have a motion?
Move to accept.
Thank you. You want to take the second on this?
Second.
Gee. Changes, errors, omissions?
Page 3.
Page 3.
Got the
All
one I
right.
got. The moral.
No. Taken out of context, Mr. Parker says Rockport is not very exciting. He meant with regards, with what the police do. So you can doctor that up however you want.
And 2 lines down, the final word of that one should be morale, not moral, I believe. Although you can confirm since you made the comment.
May help morale.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, it should have an E on the end.
Missed my own.
Commingling always helps with more.
Any other changes?
A,
Oh, with the 2 amendments, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That is unanimous. And Monday, December 5th, our most recent meeting,
move to accept.
Second.
moved and seconded. Do we have any? Oh, no, it's not. Well,
No, it's not a motion.
well, it is our last regular meeting.
I
Changes? Yes.
do have a question.
Okay, which page?
Page 6 of 11.
All right.
Ken McKinley moved to express their support for this project and that the town manager and the Camden town manager will come to the board with final plans. Is that what you guys remember we actually voted on? I thought I recalled the support for the project needing to hold pending where the money was coming from.
Well, I think we worded the motion so that there was no money in the motion.
Yes.
Because there was an earlier motion to support spending money or something, and then that motion was withdrawn.
Okay, then that's what I'm
yeah.
recalling. So then this is,
You could change that to say express the board's support instead of their support.
Yeah.
Or probably better wording there, but other than that, I think that was the second motion, because there was a motion made earlier which was withdrawn.
Okay,
Motion was made to
So
fund.
move to express, insert the board apostrophe S
Right,
in place of there.
correct.
any other changes? Corrections? Yep.
I guess this isn't a change. I will bring up my question
All right.
after the town manager's report.
Oh, all right,
Sounds like a follow-through question.
You know what? I am gonna ask.
okay.
Can we look at the wording of the minutes,
Where are we?
with regard to the Summer Street? And bear with me because I didn't write.
Should have been back under the
Oh, that
manager's
was on,
report.
yeah, it would've been early.
Manager's report is almost definitely where it is.
Yep, page 3.
3.
All right, I'm just gonna read it. There was discussion over the work on Summer Street. We need to have the handrails on sections of the sidewalk, and they're being custom made and installed soon. There is a serious problem with the road where water bubbles up. If this freezes, there could be an accident. We're looking at solutions, and it will not be pretty. It's presently in unsafe condition. We're withholding $45,000 plus their retainer. The construction was not as designed. That jives with what I remember we discussed, but I want us all to have agreed that that is what we discussed, so that we can talk about it
Yeah.
later.
Yeah,
Okay.
I believe
Yeah.
so.
Well,
No change.
was it the final payment of 45,000
Yeah, well-
and their retainer?
What we were holding, we have a retainer of, I believe it's 10%. And then there was a $45,000 payment. We have since paid them, Megan, we've paid them an amount. We paid down a lot of that 45,000, but, according to Will Gartley, the amount we have in the retainer plus what we saved out of that amount is enough to complete the project if they decided.
Okay, well, that's what we specified at the time, or stated at the time, what you stated, is what's reflected here.
Yeah, we were
Okay.
withholding the 45,000 at that point.
Yep, okay. I just want to make sure it was 45,000 plus the retainer,
Plus the
not
retainer on
a
top.
retainer of 45. Okay.
And blamed it on someone.
Did that answer your question, Brendan?
For now.
For now. Okay. Any other changes? Hearing none? All in favor of accepting as amended? That is good. We have one last one, and that's our special meeting on December 8th.
Move to accept.
Second.
That one I don't have,
I have 2.
not come in the
I
electronic version.
didn't?
So I was not here for this, right?
That is correct. You were absent.
You was absent.
That's not in the electronic version.
And this
Oh.
actually also was not on video record.
That is correct.
Is that why
First
these?
half of this is not on video record.
That's right, we had a blip in the middle. Did that get corrected?
Did we save our butts on that? You weren't part of that. I'll have to ask Terry.
Okay.
When I tried to
Status
re-
quo, yeah,
when I
no,
tried to
certainly
review
early
it.
on, it was, because it crashed halfway through the,
Oh, so it's up now?
okay,
Okay.
yeah. Let's, for the minutes, let's say one of the shows that crashed was recovered. Let's pretend it's this one for right now, but we had 2 in a row crash. So, yes, we think that that is available now, but subject to confirmation.
I mean, I think it's fine. It's just more important that we get this right,
Right.
since there's no other record.
So,
But you did not get this in an electronic form?
No, it's not in the packet, the electronic packet,
Okay.
unless I'm missing it
You,
somewhere.
you
What,
must
what
be-
month is it?
I know I saw it
December
before.
8th.
December 8th.
I know
Yeah,
I've seen
I-
it before. It was
I
sent
don't have
out.
it in mine either for December 8th. I have December 5th,
Right, which we just did.
Okay.
but I don't have December 8th.
So you want to put this?
Wouldn't it be better to table it?
Sure. Can I offer a preemptive one so that next time it comes up, these are taken care of?
Yeah, go ahead and make your comments,
Right,
even though
right.
we're not really
Oh.
going to approve it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that,
So then if you guys get electronic copies, this correction will show up in that.
Okay.
So page 3, third paragraph, Betsy Elwin, second line, ought to read, "The problem is not that there isn't enough input." It's a double negative. And she goes on to say that, so,
I thought that was a curious statement.
right. And then throughout, on the fifth paragraph, I would say, Brinkley and Mazie Thorne, M-A-Z-I-E,
Yeah,
which is actually correctly done at the
but
very
it's
end.
Maisie Cox.
Maisie
Yeah, it
Cox,
is
yeah.
Cox, yeah.
So Brinkley Thorne and Maisie Cox. That occurs
Throughout.
throughout. But on one of the documents, it's actually correct.
Yeah, I thought I'd caught that earlier. Go right back to the first page. Item 2, public comment. It's not Dwight Johnson.
It is.
Yeah, it
It
is.
is?
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. Now, continuing on, regardless of the interruption, page 5 of 8. Oh, 3.
Brinkley should read Brinkley Cox and Maisie Thorne.
No, the other way around.
Sorry, Brinkley Thorne and Maisie Cox.
Oh, the problem is not that there is, isn't enough. Not that there isn't enough.
Wait,
Insert the
Okay.
word not, right? After
Right.
the word is.
Not that, yeah.
Yeah, not that, after the word is.
did you catch all that, Linda?
No,
Okay,
losing
so the sentence should read,
sentence.
the problem is not that there isn't.
Okay.
okay.
And I had,
Can I finish my thing?
please do.
That'd be good.
Page 5, you said?
Page 5 of 8.
Okay.
Jeff, halfway down the page. The audience responded that we are doing a better job, meaning the board. We were talking about communication.
Oh,
I yield the floor.
okay. Owen?
And mine was only a question for Brendan. The recorded message that you had,
Yep.
I'm making an assumption that you had typed that up.
I did type it. I think I
Is
sent
that
it.
something that you wanted submitted in, and you could just say see attached or see appendix A or
Sure,
something?
that makes sense.
Okay, that was it.
So I'll strike that. and
Just because he has it all written out.
Sure, see attached, yep.
Okay. Others? Okay, we will table this to the 23rd.
We had a motion to accept in a second,
Oh, we did?
and then you made corrections.
Okay, I forgot we had a motion to accept.
Jeff accepted it. Made the motion, Owen seconded, and then he started with the corrections and to do a vote. So do you want to rescind that?
Just withdraw the
Will you
motion.
withdraw your
I
second?
withdraw my second
Withdraw your motion?
formally.
Okay. All right. Announcements. The next regular select board meeting will be Monday, January 23rd, 7 PM here at the Opera House and be live streamed. And we will also have a meeting on Monday, February 13th, 7 PM here at the Opera House to be live streamed. Other upcoming announcements, there will be a joint meeting with the Camden Select Board this Thursday, January 12th, 6:30 PM at the Washington Street Conference Room of the Camden Town Office. There is an agenda for that. I don't know if it has been fully published yet, though.
I heard tell that that was not going to be a live streamed meeting.
I don't know.
Someone just,
heard
We
that.
don't have
It's in
control
their
of that.
house, so.
yeah,
house,
and
so
I
they
think
g-
it was like Don White that said it, and I said, well, Don, you know how to run the board.
He would know that it wasn't because it's his wife that runs it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then Don fills in too, so I figured Don could do it if push came to shove.
It's their house.
It's their house.
Well, we're partaking.
Well, they invited us.
All
Next
right,
time we'll invite them and we'll have it here,
and we'll live stream it.
maybe.
We have that capability.
Okay, other announcements, there are a number of announcements that are on the select board, or on the town website, but of specific notice. Town offices will be closed Monday, January 16th, in recognition of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. There are a number of committee openings. They are all listed in the agenda for this evening. It also lists the alternate vacancies. Agenda changes. Do we have any changes that we wish to make to the agenda this evening?
The only one, I just got a text from Jamie where we're talking about the roof, the.
Oh, yeah, unfinished
The
business?
overhangs.
Yeah.
He's at home with a problem with his oil burner, and he may be a little bit late. So if you feel like you need him here to have that conversation,
I
he-
don't, quite honestly. We've talked about it enough, in my opinion, to be able to deal with it. I mean, when we get into the issue, we can see, but I
Okay.
don't see any reason to
Okay.
not bring it up
We
at
will-
least.
Yep.
Oh, he's leaving his house right now.
Oh, all right, well,
You wanna call him back?
since we have the town manager's report, he's got about 15, 20 minutes
Yeah,
to get
right.
here. No other agenda changes? Very well. Public comment. Public comment should be directed at issues not under discussion on this evening's agenda. Comment from the public will be welcome prior to each agenda item. Further comment will be granted only by permission from the board. All public comment should be brief and to the point. Do we have anyone wishing to make public comment this evening? Hearing none, we will move on to the town manager's report. Welcome back from Florida, Rick.
Yes, thank you. As I said in the thing, is it right there on the bottom? Is-
that's
is-
what you want,
Is that what?
anyway.
No, I don't know.
Yeah, hit replay right there.
Well, the Holiday on the Harbor was a great success again.
That's Portland.
Is that Portland?
It's Portland.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, we did a great job.
Go back, just go
There you
back.
go.
and
There it
then-
is.
and then-
Right, there it
Right
is, right
there.
there.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Holiday on the Harbor was a tremendous success again this year, in spite of the cold. There's so many volunteers, I'm not gonna sit here and try to list them all. There were, I don't know, I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't 75 or 100 different volunteers. I know John had a whole crew of kids on both ends of the street, and, setting out candles, getting bags ready. The one problem we did have was it was so cold that for some reason, we had a colder day before, but for some reason, none of the lighters would vaporize right. So it was, I don't know that we ever got all of the candles all lit. Everybody was complaining about it because I had a couple of lighters that I kept in my back pocket to keep warm so I could keep lighting. We have a short video here.
Could I ask a question on that? And I think I asked this last time too. I think it's awesome that the street has candles down at the luminaries. Look super cool. Don't get me wrong. Is there any sort of liability there with us putting candles in paper bags lining our streets at all? I'm just curious.
I mean, everything we,
I don't want to be like a Debbie Downer here or like, you know, a new age kind of person, but like we line people's front yards with fire hazards. I'm just curious. I'm just throwing it out there. I think it's great. Don't get me wrong.
All within code, exactly 18 inches from the curb, 40 inches from the sidewalk.
As per John Veman, I am comfortable.
Specifications.
10 feet apart, right? Is it 10 feet?
Oh, they were like 4 feet apart.
Yeah.
Or is it? John does, how far apart are they, John? 10 feet. So,
Plus or minus.
It's all regulation.
yeah, okay.
I want to go fishing with you if that's
So,
10 feet.
Hit the video. So we have a short, it's like a minute and a half video from Penn Bay. Thank you to Penn Bay Pilot.
If you weren't there, this is what you missed.
Right.
Keep saying troubleshooting.
You can see a bunch of them missing there. It was quite a display.
Fireworks were outstanding.
And there we are.
I didn't think it was that fast. I thought.
Well, that wasn't the whole
slower.
display. That was wasn't the whole display. So, thank you to all of the volunteers that, I mean, it actually takes quite a long time to get that all set up and pulled together. And then the day of the event, I know a lot of people work really hard to pull it all together, so thank you very much. I have no idea of how many people were actually in town. Mike said it was still pretty busy. A lot of people were up on the streets, in cars. But it was fairly cold. It wasn't, what was it? We had 5 below one year or something, or?
Yeah, it wasn't the coldest year. It
No.
was 3 years ago was bitter. I mean,
Yeah.
it was cold this time, but
Yeah, it was cold, but.
appropriately cold.
Right. The fire department has had a really busy 5-day period. They're always pretty busy, but in 5 days, they had 13 calls, including several structure fires, chimney fires, motor vehicle accidents. And then they also are doing a pretty rigorous training schedule also. I don't know if you saw, but they did a cold water rescue training just recently, where they went in the water. We also had one of the firefighters here during the fireworks, because the water was so cold, in the boat with me, in case somebody went off the bulkhead or somebody went off the barge, we could pick them up and get them out of the water pretty quickly, because they wouldn't survive very long in the water.
But they can hug all those candles.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Right?
They don't want to get burned.
Exactly. The Public Works Department has, in spite of the lack of snow, they've had a lot of time call-outs, because some of these small storms, they end up going out and having to salt and sand and push snow around for a small amount of snow, and it's, for us, the problem is, just as, I mean, the truck doesn't know whether there's 3 inches of snow or 2 feet of snow. It doesn't really care. So, they've gone through a lot of time. We also had several truck breakdowns, and surprisingly, it was on some of our newest equipment. The most expensive piece is going to be covered by warranty. It was on the new Freightliner we just bought. There was an electrical problem. They're still wrestling with the long-term solve of the problem. They think they've got it fixed, but they may have to go in and just replace the whole wiring harness in the truck. Because they just can't seem to track it down.
Will this be something we can wait until spring?
Yes, yeah, they've done a temporary fix that they bypassed something, and that allows it to continue to work.
And
And
it
they,
won't run out of warranty in
and
the
it
interim.
won't run out of warranty.
Does this involve pennies in a slot?
Yeah, this truck has been a problem for quite some time. Also, the police department, you'll see Sergeant Ford informed us last week, he would like to go back to his rank of patrol officer. He had started talking about this prior to the changeover of having Randy come on, but delayed that with the idea to smooth over the transition and all of that. He's, I believe it started now. He's switching back over to his role as a patrol officer. We're looking at now how we're gonna provide supervisory coverage and in both departments. Randy said today that they had a joint meeting, a joint training where both departments completely received all their mandatory training today, and then also all signed off on all of their training, and then they had a conversation about the supervision, and can they provide supervision and coverage from Rockland, from Camden to Rockport. And it seems like there's a lot of willingness to allow that, to see if that will work. But Randy and I really haven't had a chance to sit down and talk about it at any great length, about whether we can whether we can provide the coverage using Camden officers or not. But that's an option we may have to look at. We may be looking at. What we will be looking at is how do we compensate Camden for that if, you know, if they're providing supervision for us? We can't expect them to do that without providing any compensation for them.
Are we also exploring potentially sending one of our patrol officers that does want to assume a higher level, sending them to some sort of schooling that would give them a supervisory?
At this point, we're just beginning that process right now, at this point. So, and it's a question of, you know, that's a personnel question that we can't really talk about here. We can't get into here. So, the Summer Street, this is what you wanted to talk about, is we're in the process of coming up with a plan to get that finished. Will Gartley, Bill Lane, and Mike have been in contact with the contractor and worked out a number of what we're gonna retain, and we've paid all but, Megan, do you know what we retained?
The retainer itself is $12,000. There was $4,000 left in work that
Uh-huh.
we had,
Uh-huh.
and we retained an additional $7,000 or $8,000.
On top of that. Plus, we have the bond that we would rather not have to execute, but, so Will and Bill Lane and Mike were confident that we have enough to finish the job. I don't know if you noticed that they were out there on the end of the railing. There was supposed to be a piece added on, and they welded that piece on. We will have to it was just too late in the year to get into the road, but we will have to do something about that water that's coming up through the road itself. And that could be that it's not a fault of the contractor, it's a fault of, you know, when the water is running down the ledge and under the road and then bubbling up under the ledge, and it's not draining out the way it should. And that's not the contractor's fault. But until we can get in there and dig it up and see what's under there, we won't know what the actual solution is. So,
I've noticed, I've driven up Summer Street, and I noticed that, you know, that as you're coming up, all of a sudden you feel like you're tipping, and then you come back
oh, yeah,
down.
yeah, there's
Just
definitely,
about the first storm drain that you hit going
yeah,
up.
yeah. And you don't have to be, you know, have a transit out there to see. The water's not gonna go up the hill to those catch basins. I mean, there's a challenge because the road is so steep that no matter what the crown is, if there's a little bit of crown, it's gonna wanna go down the hill more than it's gonna wanna go to the side of the road. But there's no crown in it, and actually, at that worst spot, it actually goes like this, so.
Question?
Yeah, so, was the road built to specification or
No,
not?
it was not. The grades are, when Gartley and Dorsey went out and they resurveyed and they shot everything, it's high. It's higher in that spot. The crown is not correct in that spot. So they've got to come back in, grind out the pavement and lower it all.
Is it normal that we would find that out after paving?
Well, no, it's probably not, but it's, you know, until they put the paving down, you don't really know. I mean, the grades were all set. They came out and checked the grades, whether, I don't know what happened, but, you know, they went out and checked the grades, when the grade stakes were in. What happened with the paving, whether they put more paving in, like, you know, whether it's thicker, we don't know. But, you know,
And what is the total dollar value that's been retained from the contractor, understanding that these may or may not be the contractor's responsibility?
a piece of it may not be, but we're at like,
There's, the actual retainer is just over $12,000. There was $4,000 in additional work, so almost $17,000 between the two of them. And then there was another between $7,000 and $8,000 withheld from their last payment request.
So 23 to 24,000.
And do you have any, you're not in a position to have any sense for what the cost of,
Nope.
of the repairs are gonna be?
Will, I had a conversation with Will that the piece that we're not sure about is what will be our responsibility for the water that's, I mean, if you've had a chance to go and look at it, it's really strange. The water is actually coming up through the road. And there's not a Will doesn't have a lot of confidence that that's the fault of the contractor, that's just maybe a fault of the way the ledge is under the road.
And they also, you did a bunch of jackhammering on that too, right?
They did, right,
So
on
the
the other
potential
side.
for opening up
Yeah.
new fissures.
Right. So, but Will is confident that we'll have enough money to grind that road down and then repave it.
Within that 23,000.
Within that 23,000. We also have a performance bond that we could attach if we absolutely had to. None of us want to go that route.
So I think my bigger concern is that I think we just approved minutes which indicate pretty clearly that we know that there is a problem. And I don't understand what the liability ramifications are for the town in having just done that. But also have you here saying you don't have an immediate plan to either close the road or fix the road.
Well, we can keep the road safe. As far as for this winter? Are you talking about just for this winter?
What I'm really talking about is the wording of the minutes that we just approved. Because it doesn't sound like the road is safe. If that wording is accurate and we all just agreed to it, it
Yeah,
doesn't sound to me like the road is safe.
Well, it's safe. I mean, you can drive up and down it right now. It's safe. It's whether we get water that bubbles up through the road and then it freezes and we can't keep it salted. I mean, Mike is aware of it and he knows that he's gonna have to spend a lot more time sanding and salting that hill.
Well, I brought up that issue at the last meeting, because I said, what is the plan? Because I think, as you suggest, there is certainly a situation where we would have to close that road if we can't keep the ice off it.
Right.
Are you confident we don't have an undue liability exposure?
If we can't keep it, if we can't keep it, the ice off it, yes, we would have a liability exposure. We've been able to keep the ice off it so far. The times that we're gonna have a problem is it's not bubbling up. It's not bubbling up, for example, like it is over by your house, where it bubbles up
Pascal.
on Pascal, kind of constantly in the winter.
If someone has an accident at that location on the road, whether or not you had the ice on it,
Oh,
are we okay?
yeah. They'd have to show that it was caused by the ice on the, and we're also covered to some extent by, by our the immunity pieces of local government. But, I mean,
Well, I think we can't be negligent in it at all.
No.
I'm not suggesting that we are, but I think we really have to be proactive during any period of time when we could have water bubbling up at below freezing temperatures.
Right.
And that may mean, in my opinion, and I'm not the public works director, so it's his call, but it may mean that road has to be closed temporarily at some point if that situation
Right.
arises.
we haven't seen that water running down like it does on Pascal. And there's a place on my street on Chestnut where it just kind of comes out of the side of the road and comes down the road, and you get these big chunks of ice. We haven't seen that happening. It's only happening when we have that severe rain events. And then what would happen? It runs, and it'll run for a day after that real, big rain event. So, for example, this weekend, if we get rain on Wednesday, Thursday, and then the temperature drops, and we get a lot of it, and temperature drops on Friday, they'll have to be at that pretty significantly to keep the ice down.
So the wording that's in the minutes that we just approved says it is presently in unsafe condition. Is that true or false?
Maybe that's stronger wording than it should be, because it's not unsafe. The road is safe to drive on. It's not,
We can't have it both ways.
right, I see what you're saying. Yeah. I see what you're saying. The only time it's a problem is if that water starts running down the road and bubbling up through it. I mean, we have that problem in every road where water water runs on it. It's just that that road is so steep,
I understand that roads can be unsafe.
right, and there's a stop sign at the
But we
bottom.
declared it.
Yeah.
But I think we just said, we know we have an unsafe road,
We have the
which
potential,
strikes me as having
we have the
opened
potential,
ourselves up to,
yeah, we have the potential for an unsafe road if the water's running down there, bubbling up through the road and freezes.
Well, I think the way we remedy that, and I understand what you're saying, is that I'm looking back at the minutes now. It says it is presently in unsafe conditions. That says as of the date of those minutes. If these minutes can reflect that you believe that we can keep the road safe, or that or that we have a plan to close the road if it becomes unsafe, then I think that will trump
Okay.
Brendan's situation. I
Yep.
think. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think that
Well,
have that
that's certainly
reflected in
better than going
the
back and
minutes.
doctoring the.
You can't, yeah, you can't go back and change,
Yeah, I mean, if
what
you said
those
that,
say.
that's what you
That-
said.
right.
So unless
That doesn't-
you're gonna,
right.
say that you didn't say it, but I think at this meeting, if you can declare that we can keep the road safe, and that we have a plan, should it become unsafe, to close the road.
yeah.
So my only question is it very clear as to who makes the judgment call on putting up a sign that says, local traffic only?
Mike, we haven't talked about that expressly. We talked about it yesterday, about how to keep, that he's gonna have to keep a lot closer eye on that road than other roads because of the problem. And he's very well aware of it. But it would be Mike would make the call.
Okay, so I would urge that particular hierarchy is very clear to Mike and to you. And then I think we're okay. Then there's no, I wasn't sure if I had that
Right.
capability to shutting the road down,
Yep.
then he knows.
Yep.
And I would advocate that it shouldn't be local traffic only in that situation.
No, it
because
should
a
be
local
just-
person can wipe out and
Right.
go down the road.
Well,
It
no
should
through
be-
traffic.
Should
No-
be
yeah,
road
no through
closed. It should be
traffic,
road
yeah.
closed.
Yes.
Road unsafe.
At
road
the
closed.
top of the slope and at the
But
bottom of
you
the slope.
gotta let in the people that live there, so.
They
no-
may have to go around and go in the other way
No
for
through
that
traffic.
one steep section there.
Depends on where the closure has to be.
Depending on what it is.
Yeah, we couldn't get in there, they couldn't get in there and dig that piece up and have any sense that we were gonna be able to close it up in time.
Before the asphalt plants.
But I think
Right.
as long as we're sure that we have a protocol in place to, if we have to close that road for safety reasons, then I think we're okay.
It would probably be a good idea that if we do, we notify the press.
Oh, yeah, and the ambulance and
And
fire
the
department.
ambulance and fire, well, yeah, obviously those, and police. So,
Yep.
are we done with that part of his report? You wanna finish?
Yep. Tolman Pond, another situation that came up while I was away. We were sent a letter, a copy of a letter that went out to the Tolman Pond Association, the dam inspector, the
Potentially dangerous condition.
potentially dangerous condition. I did put that potential damage down here. That the dam inspector looked at it and said that that it is, in his mind, a dangerous situation, and has notified them, the owners of the dam, which we're not the owners. So we need to make that clear, totally clear. We're not the owners, nor are we responsible for maintaining it. I also contacted MMA and the insurance company and our counsel about our liabilities, and MMA said that we do not have any, at this point, we do not have any liability with the dam. Will Gartley is also looking at this and working with the homeowners association and the state, and to make sure that our road remains safe. He disagrees with the dam inspector's report that it would top our road by I think it's 2 feet if the dam let go. He does not think that will happen. But
But what might be the damage to that new Mill Street Bridge?
well, it's designed it's designed to handle a significant flow through there, because if you look at it, there's a trickle going through there, and it's a huge opening.
Bridge will probably survive and everything around it will be destroyed.
Right, it may be that's what, I've seen that happen, that up and downstream from the culvert
Washout.
would wash out. But again, we'd have to have a similar situation. If we know that dam is in danger, I've had to do that in other places where then you post the road, that it's a road closure, because if the dam is in danger of being topped and breached, you just close the road and.
Can I just play Brendan for a second and say that it's up there, that it's a dangerous condition?
Yeah, it is.
So then
The
should
dam
we
inspector says
close
it.
the road?
So what's the
What are we even
mitigation
talking? I
strategy?
mean, like, what are we talking
FYI.
about
It's
here?
just an FYI. It's got nothing to do with us. It's not our dam. We can't fix it if we wanted to. I suppose we could go and take it by eminent domain, but then the liability is ours. It's been there for 40 or 50 years or more. I think it was put in when they were building Route 90. Is it Route 90 or Route 17? Route 17? Route 90.
They're a
I get
lot
the two.
longer than,
When the road went in, when the road went in, the dam went in, is what I got from the state.
I thought the road went in back in the 30s.
Or when yes, the road was elevated at one point, about 40 years ago, brought up, and Mr. Tolman, there was some negotiation, went back and forth. Did I get that from you, Linda, or was it from somebody else? Yeah, and that
Steve gave you a history lesson.
it was, when it was when the road was raised several feet, there was some reason that they had to negotiate with Mr. Tolman, and he said, I'd like to have a dam and create a pond there, because it was just a stream in the wetlands that ran through there. And so they created the pond at that point. And so now the dam, its maintenance, the sluiceways where the water is supposed to be allowed to escape if it gets too deep in the pond, have come overgrown with trees and brush. Some of the trees are pretty good size, so it hasn't been maintained in years. One of the problems is that the homeowners association doesn't know what to do with it. They don't want to be responsible for it, but they all are. I believe they've had a meeting about it, Jamie? They had a meeting, was it last weekend? Yep.
All I've heard from the woman who moved in at the top there, Farley House, formerly, is that they tried to appeal the Tolmans to take it back.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's not gonna happen.
Nope, no
I don't
backseas.
think there's more to say, but I'll be ready.
So this was just basically a FYI that, you may hear about this, and it shouldn't be a surprise, but both our council and MMA says that it's not our responsibility, and we have no liability here.
Because the dam inspector has found this condition, is he going to, or she going to re-inspect on a more frequent basis?
Don't
I
know.
assume they only inspect once every X number of years.
They inspected as a result of a request by somebody downstream, correct?
Yep,
Oh.
Peter Korn.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
They came out and inspected as a result of Peter Korn making, simply asking the question, hey, if this dam ever lets go, is my property gonna be safe? And,
What was the answer?
What's that?
For his property, not our
It-
road
it-
and bridge.
It won't, I think what Will was saying is that his property may suffer some erosion, but the buildings themselves are high enough up and would be out of any water that was going down.
You said Will disagreed with the dam inspector's assessment, or?
No, just how much it would top the road by. It would top the road.
Is there any pressure that we can put on the homeowners association to do that maintenance, like removal of the trees and the undergrowth?
Yeah, that's what the lawyer is looking at. I haven't gotten a response about, what are our next steps?
Okay.
All I've gotten is that we don't have any liability, but if we have any ability to have a response.
Okay.
A short answer for that one, Rick, is that the Pine Bray subdivision, the Hammond Bray subdivision is what they're called. And long ago, we returned to them their performance guarantee, so we don't have anything in particular to hold over them. But we could learn what other types of pressure we can bring to bear.
Okay.
And lastly, the sewer extension up Route 1 to Tropical Nails is due to be sent out on January 18th with responses back by February 8th. And this would mean that the weather window would be for construction, the first weather window we get in the spring. And lastly, I was appointed to the executive board of the Maine Municipal Association. So,
How many members on that board?
boy, I'm not sure. There's quite a few.
9, 12, something
Yeah.
like that. Yep. This probably means that with Rick's luck, that he will be the president of the MMA in a couple years.
No.
I've already informed him of that.
Yep, thanks.
Going back to the sewer extension,
Uh-huh.
it's running up Route 1. Do we have any fear that we may once again encounter our good friend, whoever she was, asking all those little questions and things that delayed the southern extension so long?
No, I believe we have a different person, because Will has been dealing with a different person. All of the permits, that's what's delaying what's setting the 18th, because we have to have all of our opening permits in place before we send the
Pack it out to bid.
packet out to bid.
So just for kicks, can you make it clear that we're not talking about a citizen who has the
No.
rights to ask
No,
questions?
this is a member of the DEP or DOT that had all kinds of extraneous questions that came up at the last minute that forced us to not be able to complete the recently completed south before the summer.
But I think that was
season.
connected with the CDBG grant, wasn't it?
There was all kinds of questions about the actual
I remember that. I remember the situation.
road
but
and where it is and what, because one of them was, they wanted to know what the impact was gonna be going out Rockville Street.
We have a different person working, to my knowledge, we have a different person working on this project, so.
Yep, okay. Any other questions? Tom?
I have a question on something that is not included on the report. As I recall, you postponed the acceptance of credit cards at the town office until after the November election?
Until after after the November election, and now the first of the year. We plan on getting that going, right?
Oh.
You know,
We
it's
were
just,
supposed to go in today, but I was, you know,
right.
so someday this week.
Okay. Great.
Okay. Other questions? Then we'll move on to unfinished business, and this is the discussion of the upper floor overhangs. When we last discussed it a couple months ago, we asked for some additional assurances and actual insurance information to be provided as part of the contract. We have the revised memo here and license agreement. Jamie?
Yes, sir. Jamie Francomano from the Planning and Development Department. The property owner complied with all of our demands. And so you now have in the packet there the certificate that shows the town as an additional named insured on the homeowner's policy to the amounts recommended by the town attorney. And the one thing that came up on a second round of review just internally, we couldn't figure out why we had agreed with the town attorney that the license should not be recorded. It says in the document,
Right, specifically not in the
don't
book
do
of
it.
deeds.
Like, and that's to protect the town, because we don't want that owner or a future owner having leveraging a document that's in the registry of deeds to show somehow that it's less revocable than we thought. But we asked the town attorney about this, and he said it's just a recommendation. If the select board feels more comfortable having this document of record or just striking that phrase, we can do that. And in any event, you know, with a change that small, I think it would still be all right if you would act by authorizing the chair to to execute the license.
I have a question that's similar to that issue, is that I am not an attorney, I'm just an attorney's son and brother, but it seems to me that this does not run with the property. There's nothing.
Correct.
All right, so if they sell, they or the new homeowners removes it or goes through the permission to have it there again.
The license can be transferred, but it doesn't run with the property in the sense of it's of record in Knox County. So if the select board was looking for a reason, simply the change of owner would be, you don't need a reason. You don't need a good reason, a bad reason, or any, so it's kind of immaterial whether it moves with that person or not, but it can be transferred. The buyer will have the same deck until and unless the select board takes it away from them.
Okay.
Okay, that's my only observation of any point or omission, but,
Well, and I think it's, again, I'm not an attorney, but I think the reason is that it is not attached, we're not providing them any real interest in the property,
Right.
and so it can't be attached to the deed.
And the further you go towards a real property interest, the more you have questions of, does the select board have authorization to transfer a property interest? So the whole approach was to make something as ephemeral as possible to be granted, a license to be granted. It's been so long, it might be helpful to some to have a little bit of background on this one. Sorry about that. Okay, so the property owners at 23 Main Street have an overhanging deck, just like the neighbors next to them, goes over the sidewalk. At 23 Main Street, Barbara and Rick Kremens, the owners, have a deck that goes halfway across the sidewalk. They would like to renovate and expand the sidewalk to the same extent as the neighbor next door. And the Public Works Director is pleased to note that this will bring the deck out to the same profile as the sidewalk, so if ice or something else were to fall off, it would make it over the sidewalk and into the street. So, by all accounts, an improvement on safety. However, the existing deck encroaches on town property.
where is it?
So, initially,
It's not.
you want to get that memo?
There you go, right there.
Okay.
Initially, we had the zoning question of how can we allow someone to become more non-conforming than before? It's already encroaching on town property. But the answer is really a nice one. And the town attorney signed off on this interpretation, which is that there are no setback requirements in the 913 downtown district. We zeroed them out. And as I noted in my memo, the select board had some concern about setting a precedent for the next time somebody wants to encroach on town property. And so by that count, you could say that it's fairly limited to the downtown setting. But as you remember from our earlier conversations in Camden and elsewhere, they use these revocable licenses for much more serious types of infrastructure, including underground. So to some extent, this is a model for next time, what we've put in there, including the insurance and the form of the agreement.
Okay.
Could you give me an example of the underground
A sewer lateral.
that like a private landowner did,
Yep.
and there was a revocable license?
Right.
Whoa. Okay.
I move to approve the license agreement as presented in the attachment and signed by Richard Kremens, and to authorize the chair to sign on behalf of the town.
Happily second, because wow. I'm sorry, it was like one of the first things that came across my plate, and I'm just so happy to, a year and a half later, get it taken care of.
Okay.
And by way of discussion, any preference about recording or not recording the instrument?
I think that the town council's, my opinion, advice not to record it makes sense to me.
Very good.
So assuming that discussion has not been squashed by our anxious colleague on the left there.
We are still in discussion.
I think it's, I'm going to stand by my original statement that I think that it's a bad way of going about things. I just assume, the ORC was able to get it in high gear. They passed a thing that said, hey, everybody can do this. You can do it, until the cows come home. This whole idea of a revocable agreement is I think it just puts them in jeopardy, although they want it, they'll live with it, that's fine. So I will end up voting for it, but the caveat is that I think it's a bad way of making zoning decisions.
Yeah. Owen?
Stinky.
You're the ORC liaison.
I am.
Gentleman right there.
Do we have any word about their discussions on this
The ORC
issue?
looked at it and they decided that the best way to handle it was their recommendation was to use the revocable license issue. Because when this first came up, as you recall, we
Yeah.
referred
Yeah,
it to
we
the
sent it to
ORC.
them.
Yeah.
And they looked at it and we talked about the possibility of how could we word things, and their thought was it was easier to do it this way, and that's the way that other towns do it also. So it came back with that recommendation, and I sort of agree with Jeff. I would have liked to have seen something codified in the ordinance that made it a little bit better, but you know, where we're not going out on a limb doing this. This is done in other towns and seems to work. So
Yeah.
I'm okay with it.
And generally speaking, I would agree with you both as well, that I would, and especially with the potential of a hotel, with potentially some overhanging balconies, trying to get some language codified in there, at least for this district.
So for now, you're creating a very narrow precedent in this very small zoning district where there are no setbacks, and you're getting insurance with it.
Can the minutes reflect Mr. Parker holding his nose?
No. Please. Do we have further discussion?
No, sir.
Then all in favor of the motion? Very good. And here I'm signing it.
Wasting no time.
I'm not dating it or anything because I think some notary has to deal with that.
Everyone's staying
Okay,
warm.
the next item is, and I gotta find my notes here, new business.
Possible to ask one unfinished business question
All right,
that didn't make it onto the agenda, and you can shut me down if, I'm just wondering where we stand on the sidewalk project with DOT.
High
that-
sidewalk?
Which, the high
No,
sidewalk?
the,
Route 1?
Route 1 sidewalk.
That's gonna be a topic of the discussion with the Camden Select Board.
Perfect.
On Thursday.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's,
And I'll give you, when we get to liaison report, we discussed it.
we're not
pathways
doing
a little bit.
liaison report this month, this time. This is town manager. Next meeting, we'll do liaisons. You didn't read my
That was in
notes
red.
that I sent out.
I read everything but your notes.
There we go. All right. But there are gonna be three things, three basic things. One is how we're doing on the police chief, one about the waste treatment and their plans, and then the sidewalk and the increased costs and where we're moving.
Thank you.
And, well, that's just an ancillary item. All right, let's move on. We have a number of gifts that have been made to the town, and I'm going to read them here. One is we will recognize an anonymous donation to the General Assistance, General Reserve Fund in the amount of $2,000. There is an anonymous donation to the same fund in the amount of $200. The Lakeview Presbyterian Church has donated $200 to the Rockport Fire Department. The same church has donated $200 to the Rockport Police Department. And the Center of Furniture Craftsmanship has made a donation of $5,500 as a voluntary contribution in lieu of property taxes. And finally, a gift from the Coastal Opportunities of $300 as a voluntary contribution in lieu of property taxes.
Could I ask
Really very, very generous.
That's a good question.
Yes?
Maybe it's not the most appropriate time to talk about it, but I am curious about nonprofits in town and the payments in lieu of taxes.
Talk to Carrie about it.
Yeah, because this is great. This is awesome. And I would just like to encourage any other nonprofits to follow suit if their finances did.
That's why we are recognizing them.
Maine Media Workshop also does it, and
Yep.
also the Aldemere Farms, and we have several of the land trusts that have some
I
money.
guess I just would have made the assumption that they're all operating on a similar timeline, and so we would have gotten all these contributions at a similar time, but that's an improper assumption.
They come in at different
Their
times.
boards
Yeah,
could do it at any time.
It's a board decision for each of those operations. So, and, you know, the center, the Furniture Craftsman Center has been always been very strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a couple of years when they were battling some other stuff that they weren't able to, but right back at it.
Well, you must have missed it during the Midco Solid Waste budget discussions. Midco Solid Waste, as a tax exempt entity, makes a $6,000 payment in lieu of taxes to us.
I didn't miss that, I just forgot it.
Okay, just as an example of another one.
That's good,
So-
thank you.
You know, I don't know who all they are because some of them make them anonymous.
Move to accept the donations listed and to send a letter of thanks to all the individuals or organizations making the donations.
Second.
Moved and seconded. These are very generous, and we're very pleased to receive them.
We are, and I want to comment about the payment in lieu of taxes as well. We do appreciate the nonprofits, what they contribute to the town, and it's awfully nice when they recognize that although they are not required to pay property taxes, that the town services they receive are worth something, and they make a contribution to help cover those. So that's very much appreciated by me, anyway.
So we have the motion, and it's been seconded. All in favor? All right, I think I have some of them here in the things for signature later. The next item is committee resignation. We have a resignation of George Hazelton from the Conservation Commission.
I move to accept the resignation from George Hazelton from the Conservation Commission with regret, and ask the town manager's office to send him a letter of thanks.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion?
George, during my time as liaison on the Conservation Commission, George was very strong on a lot of issues. He was really instrumental in getting the pesticide workshop that we had last year organized, and so he will be missed.
Yep. Any further discussion? All in favor? Very good. Now we have a committee application, Taylor Allen to the Ordinance Review Committee. And he is here. Taylor, why don't you come on up to the microphone? So, you're very interested in downtown development issues. I think I can understand why. What prompted you to do it at this point? Oh, I see.
I did.
She got asked.
What got me interested was the issue around hotels downtown. I also served on this committee many years ago, and so I attended some meetings, and I found that the process just piqued my interest and thought I might try it again.
Okay. What
I
is
don't
your,
think I have a particular agenda, but
I was gonna ask you, what was your opinion about the hotels downtown?
I think it's a good idea.
Okay.
I was glad to see that it looks like the ORC anyway is going to make some recommendations to that effect.
Yeah, what I saw in the newspaper, the maximum of 40 rooms anywhere in the downtown district, is that where they're standing
That's
now?
where they're standing right now as an aggregate total.
Yes.
And part of it is just to get a start on it, the concern is that we didn't want the whole downtown to be one big hotel. That we want to have a vibrant business district with a lot of different entities, but certainly that hotels could be a part of that.
Just
Owen?
because we're on it, is the maximum square footage per room, or could you have massive rooms?
If you thought you
just
could make
40
money on
of them.
Yeah, it's economic pressures, I'm sure,
Diminishing
would
returns.
dictate that,
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
Now, Taylor has been attending the ORC meetings for interests in his property, but he's also contributed on other issues while I've been there, and I think he'll be a great addition to the committee.
Well, I say congratulations to the ask, and there's nobody I could think of that would better serve the committee, so.
Nice strong arms for twisting.
And the good news is, I don't see a date out, so you're stuck. A term out where, oh, there.
Yeah, this appointment would be through June 30, 2019.
Well, I'll move to appoint Taylor Allen to the Ordinance Review Committee with a term expiration of June 30th, 2019.
Second.
We have competing seconds here. Take your choice, Linda. Okay.
Thank you for
Further
serving.
discussion? None? All in favor? Thank you for the volunteering, and
volunteering.
look forward to a lot of good work.
Thank you, Brendan.
I think he said that a little facetiously.
Yeah.
I'm just returning the favor.
Okay, the next item we have, there's been a request by the family of Frank Ferriello to have a plaque in his honor placed somewhere in the vicinity of the Mill Street Bridge. As we recall that he met his demise this summer overseeing the work that was being done there. We do have a letter in our packet here, I think.
An email.
Yeah, it's an email. Do we want to have a discussion, or does somebody want to make a motion?
I'll move to approve the request in honor of Frank Ferriello to have a plaque mounted at the Mill Street Bridge site at a location to be approved by the town manager.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Hopefully it won't be in one of those locations where it's
Well,
gonna get washed
Yeah.
away when the dam lets go.
Well, and I assume too that considerations about winter road maintenance would factor into it. You know, we
Yeah.
don't want to have it getting knocked by a plow or anything.
Right, there's a couple of, I don't know if you've been down there, but there's some of the landscaping around, there's a couple of nice grassy spots where it can go, where it's off the road, but still visible enough.
And is there a reason that we feel that it shouldn't be attached to the bridge itself?
The family didn't want it
Family
attached to the
didn't
bridge.
Okay.
No, I'd be happy to honor him in any way.
As I said at the time, I think that all of us take for granted this type of work, this infrastructure work, that it gets done, and it is dangerous. It's a lot less dangerous than it was 100 years ago when lots of people died building the Brooklyn Bridge, but we need to honor those people who do that work for us.
Comment?
The Hoover Dam.
Mhm.
Huge amount of people.
Yep. So, hearing no further discussion, call for a vote. All in favor? That is passed. The next item is a presentation by our technology committee.
Anytime.
When did we get the add-on of ad hoc? I don't know.
Oh, you fought that and that was there in the beginning and then you didn't like it.
Yeah,
Okay.
we never changed it.
It's back in the nomenclature.
We'd have to reappoint everybody to it if we changed the name.
Okay.
You already traveled down that road.
So, quick, trying to get you guys up to speed on what technology committee's been doing. Up until the town meeting last June, we were sort of focusing a lot of our energy, almost exclusively on the fiber conversation. After the vote, of course, we all went back and took a good look at what happened. And, you know, there's a lot of issues there, but what we really concluded was that we'd all agree that the vote was premature for what we were asking. No matter what side you're on, it just seemed like there was a lot of loose information that was, you know, a lot of misperceptions, a lot of bad information. So we sort of took a look at that and looked at our committee and just generally our structure, what was our mandate coming from the select board. And we decided on our own to establish some clarification on that. Because some of the committee was focused on the fiber, some was focused on other parts of the mandate that we were given as an ad hoc committee. So we came up with what you're seeing on the screen, which is sort of an overall mandate for the committee to redefine that, which is about how we can apply technology to improve the quality of life in Rockport. Very simple, very direct. Then we have two subcommittees that we've established underneath that to work on different aspects of that. One is what we call the broadband subcommittee, and that's clearly, again, on the screen, how we can most effectively make broadband technology accessible to all residents and businesses in Rockport. So it's a very clear statement of what we feel should be our focus. Then we have a services and communications subcommittee, and again, how can we make better use of technology to improve services and communication, both internal and external, in Rockport. Again, we think that's very clear, what we're going to be working on. Thank you for enlarging the type. So if you just focus then, most of our focus then shifted to the broadband subcommittee and really bring that around. We felt that it was very important for us to do our homework on that. So we've had 7 meetings with at least 16 representatives from multiple organizations and institutions in the time between August and now. One of our other committee members, who's the chair of the subcommittee, Deb Hall, will be here to walk you through any of the particulars of those meetings. I can say that just this is a list of all the people we've met. You might want to shrink that a little bit to get everything on there. Those are the representatives we met with and the companies that they represent. You can see there's a very broad spectrum, no pun intended, because one of them is named Spectrum.
Yep.
But we've gathered a lot of information. Just to skip right down to the kind of the bottom line on everything, we clearly felt as a committee that, and the town, that we need professional help to sort out our next steps, is really what it's all about. This is a very complicated issue. There's a lot of good people, good resources out there that weren't available when we started looking at this issue. They're only getting better. There are very, very qualified people that are willing to step forward right now and start giving us information that we wouldn't have had before. So we're sort of done with our phase 1 part of our due diligence, or doing our homework. We're starting to move into what we'd call phase 2, which is really get what they call an opinion of cost that includes funding recommendations and other target metrics for doing, for accomplishing the mandate that we have as a subcommittee. So if you want to drill down into any of that, or any one of these, these meetings we've had to get to what did we discuss, we're happy to do that. I just didn't know how long you want me to.
This phase 2 that you talk about, is there a cost associated that the town would have to bear?
Well, there's no cost at this point because we're asking for bids, essentially. So that's an excellent question, because yes, at some point we would be expecting to come back to the select board with a recommendation to, if you want to move ahead on pursuing this mandate, that we're probably going to need to get some professional help. Professional help means you have to pay for it. And how much that is, we don't know yet. But we feel that really getting very specific information to answer some of the questions that came up is really, really important. And getting outside our, well-intended population and pool of expertise is really important, because this is a complicated issue. It's technology.
So that would be a cost that we would need to be looking at to put in our budget.
Yes, do you want to speak a little bit to that, Deb?
Owen, before you step up, Deb, Owen, you had a
Just a
question?
quick, and this is not any sort of jab or anything like that. Was bid the word you were actually looking for? Only because I didn't think that it was
no,
standard
bid is not-
practice for committees to be putting out things to bid.
No, we're not putting out for a bid, but we have on their own, some of the people on that list that we've talked to, particularly,
Costing frameworks.
yeah, Finley was going to give us, they've done this to hundreds of communities. They were going to give us the benefit of basically a free estimate of what it might take to have them come in if we wanted that kind of service. So it's really just, we're trying to ballpark some of this stuff, just to give you guys better information of, what are the parameters. And if you want to do a formal bid or, get into that kind of thing, sure, we'll happily do whatever you ask us to do.
Yeah.
So, John, would it be fair to say that the committee in stage 2 still is convinced that there is tremendous value to the town to have this ability to at least consider this for the town, and that a large part of, particularly the early efforts, were to investigate public-private relationships that whereby the town could execute gigabit or any, let's call it broadband services to everyone in the town. The committee changed focus and said, how can we maximize our dollars? How can we do it for half of what we had for a quarter of it, that sort of thing. So that was a large part of the first part of what you see here, is that?
Yeah, well, I guess the short answer to your question is we found that there were a lot of the numbers that were being thrown around were grossly exaggerated. costs were way higher than what we're actually finding. We're finding that there are a lot of different ways we could assemble broadband service, high-speed internet service, whatever you want to call it, better service. You're making technology more available to people that live in Rockport. There were a lot of different ways we could do that weren't even begun to be explored. And we've talked to some of the people that are, offering these services, and they're willing to explore partnerships, hybrid systems. Really, we kind of just jumped all the way to only one way in what we put in front of the residents, and I think, rightly so, we were sent back to do more homework, so.
Brendan?
John, I was wondering, is the committee aware of and taking advantage of the resources available through the Island Institute and the Community Economic Development Program around broadband?
Not exactly sure. You're referring to a specific program that they have at the Island Institute?
If I don't know I know their involvement with island communities. I don't know what extent those same resources would be made available to a non-island community. But there's a woman named Bree Warner at the Island Institute, which I would urge you to reach out to see, because they're local and they have a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
know Bree.
experience in this area.
Yeah, we have explored some other federal and state programs, one of whom was, through the Office of Comptroller and the people on December 2nd. And they talked to us about, what is it called again, Deb? The
Community Reinvestment Act.
Community Reinvestment Act, which again is another, where you can get, very low-cost money.
And that, to follow up on Brendan's question, those two contacts from ValleyNet Vermont and Office of Comptroller in Chicago, that came from a workshop that I attended that was sponsored by the Island Institute that was over in Hollowell, I believe. I think I was the only one that went from Rockport, but it was an excellent
They have a lot of
presentation.
expertise in this area.
It was an excellent presentation.
And certainly, the committee has pumped a huge amount of information out of the folks from Islesboro.
Yeah, which you may be getting the same information just from two different sources.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, we aren't the first ones to ask these questions. We aren't the first community to be trying to do this or there are plenty that have already done it successfully. And so we're just looking for, how did that work and what were the dynamics? The dynamics that Page had out at Islesboro, for instance, that may have involved the Island Institute. I'm not sure, but most of their funding came outside that, if not all of it. But, they had certain peculiarities about that community that made whatever they did the best option.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the resources that I have seen that particular organization be focused on is community discourse. And it seemed to me as though when we had that with discourse within the community about an issue like this, and it seemed to me as though when we voted on that particular topic in town meeting, we skipped over a conversation about whether or not the internet has become a public utility or should be a public utility, and straight to something with a price tag. My own observation was that it seemed like we were trying to allocate funding for something which we hadn't convinced people was needed yet.
Well, I wouldn't disagree with that at all. In fact, it was quite clear by virtue of the vote.
Yeah.
So we hadn't convinced even the majority of people, so.
Are you getting those resources from these meetings?
Yeah, well, Page, for instance, a good example. The guy was just a fountain of information. Really, a lot of really good, relevant basically all these people that we've talked to have been giving us, one other piece of the puzzle as we've gone along, and some of them really big pieces. Page could probably have written a book on how to do this right. I mean, they have, what was it, 70% right now of the island is signed up to the program.
Yeah.
70% take rate, and it's growing. Some of these other communities, Pioneer, what did they have?
70%.
They've got 70%. I mean, you know, there's a right way to do it to where everybody says, yeah, this makes total sense. And some of them, and like the one that Pioneer did, there was a completely different funding mechanism for what Islesboro did.
Yep.
But Page had kept copious records, they bent over backwards to talk to, they probably talked to, had a meeting with at least one meeting with everyone that lives and owns a property on that island. Walk them through very specific, like your individual situation. What will it mean? How does the money break down and the cost break down? How's it going to affect you? You know, but they spent, what did Paige say? It was 4.5, 5 years of getting to that vote. So if you think we tried it and, you know, what we had set up was 4 to 5 months,
Yeah.
you know. so-
Deb, you wanted to add some things?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a few points, and expand on a couple that John had made. You know, I would say I had no intention of walking through, you know, what we gleaned from all of these meetings, but you can see we've been pretty active and we have gathered a lot of information, which is where we felt that, you know, what we needed to do. I think that a couple of the highlights that have come out some of the meetings, the build costs that we had previously heard are much higher than what the actual experience has been for a lot of these entities. I mean, we had a meeting with Pioneer, and they talked about a build cost. They still have one outstanding bill, so this is not a final build cost. But right now, their build cost was $17,000 a mile, and what they did up in $17,000. What did I say? A mile for what they did up in Holton. And even if it comes out to be $20,000 a mile, that's a far cry from what, $70,000 a mile. Other entities have done builds for $30,000. You know, sometimes as much as 35 or 40. But another thing that John mentioned, you know, possibilities of hybrid designs. You know, we've been talking about a number of things, but I wanted to also expand on his comment about the funding. There are various funding options that we've been looking at, just begun to look at. USD loans, USDA loans and loan guarantees, the Community Reinvestment Act, CRA. As noted, the controller, the federal, you know, Department of Treasury Controller's Office, we met with them by conference call in December, and they talked about the funds that banks have to invest into the community through the CRA. And one of the things that they mentioned was the Knox County census tracts, that there's 9 out of 10 of the tracts have the communities at low or moderate income, all of them except Rockport. And so, but, however, the fact that economic development, we're not foreclosed from trying to get some CRA funds out of some, you know, local banks because of the economic development aspect of it. In fact, they talked about Minnesota, that they had, was that where they had 2410? No, that's Vermont.
Yeah.
But,
Oh,
but
Minnesota.
anyway, Minnesota, I think, anyway, they had 50% of the towns, they got CRA funds there, and 50% of the towns were low to moderate income per the census tract, but 50% were not. And so that's another aspect of this, that for us to potentially partner with some other towns, and even going south, for example, to South Thomaston or St. George, could actually open up some opportunities for us from a funding standpoint. And another thing that I think was really interesting that came out of the meetings was that some of the builds have taken place by getting funding based on like a pre-subscription, so that you go out to the town people and people sign up and say that they want that service. Well, great. Then those are the first ones that you build, and you do it, you know, on a phase-in sort of basis like that. and the funding, and that can help with the funding. And I guess lastly, I'd just like to say this comment that John made about the Finley Engineering. Finley Engineering is a company that I had, an engineering firm that does work nationally and is licensed in Maine and has done work in Maine, but they have done hundreds of these, and for decades they have been involved, or they have specialized in technology. And we met with them just recently by conference call. And one of the things that they pointed out to us was that when you're talking about an engineering study, you really need to make a distinction of an engineering study that is intended to be the design, build, that you actually build off of, or the engineering study that you really assess your costs, your take rates, and funding options, which actually is sufficient for you to go out to obtain funding. So it's not some minimal kind of document, but it's robust enough to actually get funding off of. Anyway, the point was that they had told us that for $50,000 to $75,000, that they could do this latter document that I just mentioned to you. It's called an opinion of cost. And as part of explaining the difference between these two different types of studies, they volunteered to give us an estimate that we could pass along. That was the no RFP kind of thing involved. They volunteered to do that based on, could we get them GIS information? So we've been talking with the staff, and we're in the process of getting them the GIS information that they can use and base that estimate off of that would be coming your way in the near future. Because with the $50,000 to $75,000 figure, we thought that might be a very different kind of situation than what we might have been presented with before. And I would like to hold out some hope that we might be able to get some private funding for that, or some portion of it.
All right. You had a second part of your task that you were mentioning,
The other subcommittee?
the other subcommittee.
Yeah, the other subcommittee is, we haven't really been working much on that because it's, I think one of the keys on that is, and I haven't really talked to anybody, in town staff about this, so this is incoming new information. I think one of the keys to accomplishing success with the second subcommittee is identifying someone internally in staff that is going to own this. Because the committee can sit and, try to think how things work in the office, for instance, on a day-to-day basis, but we're just a group of people outside doing this part-time. We really need something formed internally to work with the subcommittee to really bring that around. And we're going to need a couple more subcommittee members to do that.
Find the youngest town employee you can, that's your liaison.
Well, any business I've been involved when we've done something major, like an assessment like that, it was almost always someone like quite frankly, the CFO usually was a key player in that team of making the transition, and if you were lucky, you had a director of IT or something like that. But that's not what we have. So
Well, Gus sat in on a lot of your meetings, didn't he?
yeah.
Was he helpful?
Yeah, Gus was very helpful.
No,
That a
what I
legit
did
smile, or-
hear,
Well, what do you want me to say? I'm like,
what I heard you
on the
say
committee,
very
we're all
clearly,
helpful. We're all helpful.
what I heard you say very clearly is you need more help on your
Yeah,
subcommittee.
we need more people to do the
Arm
work.
twisting
There's
time.
a lot of details here that, somebody's got to sit and look through all the processes of the town internally. We've probably got to do a survey of the town to figure out what the residents and taxpayers need, what they would like, what the businesses need. I mean, that's an onion that's just going to keep having layers to it. So that's going to be a long process too, because you can't just go in and suddenly, introduce a whole new chunk of technology. Everything's going to be connected.
And in fairness to the committee, the work leading up to town meeting, took an extreme amount of work on their part, and all of their focus went into that. And then after town meeting, if you look at the list of meetings that they've had and work that they've done behind the scenes, most of the effort has been placed in that broadband subcommittee. It's just one committee, and they've broken into two tasks, and so they've done a lot of work on this. The broadband subcommittee piece has taken a lot of their time and effort.
Do you have an idea of a timeline as to when the broadband committee might be coming to the select board with a recommendation, or what the next recommendation might be?
Well, my expectation would be, it would be soon, probably within the next 2 to 3 months or something like that. I mean, we're trying to take some of this on, as we, in an orderly fashion. Each one of these meetings is, with each speaker, is at least an hour of intense conversation and questions, and
I'm
they're
not
all,
meaning to rush you at all, because I think
No,
it's-
I'm
I
just
think
trying
the
to be
work you're doing
realistic.
is laying a tremendous foundation from what
I'm
I
trying to
can
be
gather.
realistic, and we may have some back and forth with the people from Finley, for instance, to just get clarification. We don't want to put anything up that isn't ready for prime time,
Okay.
so.
And the committee is cognizant of how to mesh nicely with the budget time schedule, were it to, when they're prepared to do
Okay.
that.
John, this second subcommittee that you really haven't, gotten a lot of traction with yet, is the select board's communication with Rockport residents one of the things that subcommittee might be focused on? Digital communication between the select board and the citizens of Rockport, is that one of the things that might be tackled by that
Oh, yeah.
second subcommittee?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all the way down into social media, is that what you're talking about?
That is what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
T-
Um,
yeah. We'll get you guys all texting each other, and it'll drive all the freedom of information
Twitter
people
handle
crazy.
at Rockport Select Board.
Yeah.
Are
I
there
just-
other
okay.
categories?
Well,
that-
I would like to see Bill doing Twitter, or, doing a little Twitter account all his own. I think it's kind of fashionable.
You might get one tweet, and that'd be it.
What else would that second subcommittee, what do you envision it
All right, let
being
me-
responsible for?
So, in the area of communications, it would be things like, dealing with e-blasts, websites, e-newsletters. We might want to have an app. There might be apps for different needs in the town. Certainly gets into things like live streaming this meeting and other meetings. It gets into software issues, what the town employees are using. Could get into some of the stuff that Megan's using for financial reports, and making sure that's connected to all other parts of the town. I mean, there's everything's, when you get into this, everything starts to be connected pretty quickly. Gets into public relations and marketing, aspects of economic development. Are there technology tools that the town can be creating or developing or acquiring that could help in the area of economic development? The lists are easy to come up with. It's really just, you can see how any one of those is
A
pretty
job.
significant amount of effort.
Okay.
I just had one quick statement. Listening to you, I felt like the technology committee was trying to take some ownership of the failed proposal at town meeting. I don't think that that's a fair onus to put on you all. I felt like that was our gig, and we dropped the ball there. You all just came on the tail end. So I just wanted to get that out there, that I don't think that it was the technology committee's work or lack thereof. I think a lot of it fell onto the select board that it failed during town meeting.
Yeah, well,
I wouldn't hold you all accountable for that at all.
we're not, no, again, I'm not saying it was, frankly, I think it was ultimately, in hindsight, was the right decision, because it was, we
Well,
didn't
look
have-
at all the other information we're gathering
Right.
now. We're learning a lot more that
Yeah,
just
I mean,
wasn't on the
so
table.
really, you could go back over that, and who did what, when, what time, it's just, we weren't ready for a vote. And I think a lot of people trying to make this place our town a better place to live, brought that message home loud and clear. So we're moving forward.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. The next item we have here is to look at the capital improvement plan, which just came out. The draft, I should say, this is the draft capital improvement plan. We will, at some time in like April or May, probably decide to hold
She has a
workshop.
PowerPoint that-
Where is it?
The PowerPoint is up.
Oh,
Where
we
is
got a
it?
PowerPoint.
She said desktop.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Take care.
Capital, blah, blah, that?
Oh, yep, that's it.
One moment, please.
I like the thing bouncing down at the bottom.
Yeah. Trying to open it.
Technology. So much fun. Oh,
So Megan is going to go through basically a PowerPoint explaining really how to look at this. My hope is that we don't get into the nuts and bolts of, get in the weeds of discussing individual projects in this CIP, because it's pretty extensive, but to just get a sense of how it was created, the work that was done, how you read it, and then to kind of figure out a way to move forward and get it implemented and meet and discussed properly. Because we do not have the time to discuss all
Yep.
of the items that are in
Right.
here right now.
You want to test that? Just, yeah, test it. No, you're, I didn't think so.
I'm gonna utilize this opportunity to use the bathroom.
Am I too far away?
And while she's trying to figure this out, I will say that Megan put a tremendous amount of work into this, trying to get it done, on top of the budget and everything else that we have going on. And, unfortunately, it took us longer to get here than we had hoped. But Megan did a huge amount of work pulling this all together, and we have more work to do on it. There's still some more. I would like to make it more user-friendly so that the average resident can open it up and figure stuff out. I think there's a lot of technical stuff in here, but I'd like to get it so that it's more understandable for the user, and I know Megan is of the same opinion with both this and the budget, that it should be more user-friendly for the average resident to be able to contemplate. So, Megan, if you can go
Do you
through.
wanna wait for Owen, or?
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
go ahead.
So there's some just key things that Rick and I wanted to touch on. I gotta get closer.
You gotta get closer so you can see that.
12-point type, come on.
Just remember that this is a working document. It's something that's gonna have to be reviewed annually. There might be things as we get talking about it that, oh, this should have been in here, and the department heads or Rick and I didn't think of it, or we were so inundated with all the other requests that we got, it just wasn't something that came to our minds. This is, it's important to look at our long-range horizons. The CIP is not only for our immediate next 5 years, but we also need to think about the items that are gonna cost a lot or even be in the horizon in the next 10 years. And this will help us better plan and allocate those funds going forward. So Rick and I are requesting a couple of things, to schedule a workshop that includes the select board, the capital improvement committee, Rick and I, and the department heads, to all go through this together, as a complete document.
Should we include the budget committee too? Haven't thought about that.
Could invite them.
Yeah, we can always invite them.
Doesn't hurt.
Okay.
I have also, my full intentions were to have a completed capital improvement plan done before we reach budget season. So I reorganized and structured the budget to include the capital improvement plan. So our request is to put the capital improvement plan in as a draft version in this year's budget, just so that the townspeople can see that we are working towards a plan and we do have a draft. So the first thing that you'll see is what we considered when developing the capital improvement plan. There's also some definitions in the front. There's a comprehensive list within the first few pages. Rick doesn't like the list because it's too small.
For my old
but that
eyes.
was that was the only way we could get it to fit on the page. And that comprehensive list starts on page.
Nine, is it?
Yeah.
Yes. Starts on page 9, and this includes every item that has backup documentation in this binder.
Oh, I know.
So you'll see that there's several columns. There's a column for the project schedule,
Megan,
which,
can I just ask, is what I'm seeing on pages 9, 10, and 11, that is the entirety of one list?
yes. So column 1 is the project schedule. You'll only see a date there if it's already been scheduled or is projected to be scheduled. So things like vehicle replacements for Public Works and the Police Department, computer replacements are all scheduled because we've already had those plans in place. So those were pretty easy to determine. Also, if we had projects that needed to be done within the next 5 years, we put in those dates as well.
Those are the ones that are in black?
The ones in black are projects that have been committed to already or have been completed, but are still on here because we have lease payments on them or bond payments on them, so they're still technically part of the capital improvement plan.
Question, why do none of the things in red have a rating? Is it because we're deferring all of those?
That is gonna be something that is discussed amongst the group to determine. I mean, each department head set priorities, but now we need to set priorities townwide based on what the town can afford.
And that'd be
So
what
when
we
the-
do in the workshop.
Right.
When the committee gets together for, when the committee gets together for a workshop, or when the board gets together for a workshop?
Workshop she
Right.
described a little bit ago.
Oh,
I
when
think the
With
committee,
Select Board, Capital Improvement Committee, Rick and Megan, the department heads, invite the Budget Committee.
Perfect.
once we do that preparatory meeting, when we go through all of the things, then the way I see it is the Capital Improvement Committee will go back and start to work and go through all these things in much more detail and rate them and put them in a prioritized order. That'll be the work that they'll do. Or throwing some of them out if they think that they're useless, or maybe adding some in that we may have missed. I mean, 'cause we may have missed things. I know it doesn't look like it.
The next column is the project, so it's a few word description of the project itself. And then like Owen said, there's a rating column. The only ones that are rated thus far are the ones that have been completed. The description describes the project. The type will list out if it's facility, equipment that's being replaced, if it's infrastructure, roads. So the type just basically tells you what type of project it is. The projected cost, annual cost. So the costs here, some are listed as unknown because department heads weren't able to get quotes for us. And then most of the items listed in red are, if you look further in your light blue, there's a deferred column. Most of those amounts were deferred because they haven't been committed to yet, and they weren't something that we felt needed to be done right now. In that light blue section, you see the previous budget. So if there's any money that's been encumbered, if there's any money that was rolled over or put into a reserve account specific for this, it will be listed there. If there's money in the current budget, so the 17-18 budget, that amount would be listed there, lease purchase, reserve, bonds, and then deferred.
I guess I'm just a little confused because so then we put $200,000 aside for the Glencore Cove shore access in a previous budget, or $175,000 for lime kiln restoration.
Are you
Previous-
looking at the projected actual cost?
No, he's in the light blue section.
In the light
in
blue
column
section under previous budgets. And this isn't I'm just trying to figure out how to read this thing properly. Because by that rationale, we've got a lot of money put aside for previous budgets?
I think that's just in the wrong spot.
Yeah, because that's in red and doesn't have a rating.
Well, the 175 is over all the way to the right too, under deferred.
Right. Those are
And so
things
is
that-
the 200 for the other one, but I'm just confused.
I mean, that item there should be the sum of all of those, and it's not, right? I think. So we see in projected actual costs, lime kiln restoration, $175,000.
Yeah, those amounts shouldn't be there.
In fact, that value should be in only one of those.
Yeah, it should only be in the
Cells to the
deferred
right.
column.
Deferred column.
Yep.
But the ones that are in black
Have already been committed to,
in previous budgets.
right.
So just,
But they're still on there because we have bond payments or lease payments.
but like in line in Abby's for harbor piling replacement, you've got it previous budget and 6,000 for proposed budget. So in proposed budget, is that going into this current budget
Right,
cycle?
so the pilings are a little different because $6,000 has been budgeted every year for the last several years to replace those. So that's why you see those numbers. The annual cost is 6,000, the projected cost. So then last year we budgeted 6,000, the proposed budget's 6,000, and then we've deferred another 24,000 because that's the next 4 years out.
But again, just keeping with am I reading it or understanding it correctly? How does it come to pass that an item in the previous budget isn't black?
It was just a
It
mistake.
should be.
Okay.
Could be black, yeah.
But like so like
Well,
these ones are
Those
mistakes.
are just errors.
Yeah.
Yeah. those-
Okay, cool.
But this is probably not helpful micromanaging, but the cells, this should be built in a way that can't actually happen, right? That the
Yeah, I don't know
projected
why
actual.
those numbers are
Okay.
there. My guess is that when I was working on the individual, when you go further through your binder, you see each department has its own tab. My guess is that when I was doing those, it copied over around.
That actually is another question. Would it be possible for you to have another column with these tabs so that you could sort by either your green categories or sort by these topics?
Good.
Would that be helpful to other people so that
Well, because you have to, in essence, you have to be assured that that happens anyway, because at the end, you're gonna be looking at the years projected out, and you need all those guys there anyway, so they might as well be tabbed
well, and I'm trying to make it
in one giant.
I'm thinking, to choose the harbor, for
Sure.
instance.
You
If
go in and you
they're
say
actually
select only.
working in the Excel file, then they just want to see their stuff in order to get it to you in
Right.
time.
So then moving on in the chart, you'll see the next 4 years planned out as well. And mostly what's there is
That's at
the same, truck replacements that we're gonna have to pay for, things of that sort.
Can we clarify you mentioned a couple of times as the column saying annual cost, but it actually says
It should be
actual
actual
cost.
costs.
So that's more, that should be an aggregate for whatever the life of the project is that correct?
Yes.
And as Brendan points out, there should be formulas worked in there, so that as soon as this is laid out here, it takes away from the
Yeah.
other thing.
Okay.
Stupid, you did it wrong.
So going through, you'll see if you flip it back around, we'll start with the town office, for example. They all have a cover page, and then they have their own capital improvement comprehensive list. And then following that is all the backup documentation for the items that are requested for the town office. You'll also see, so that it's not a shock to you when we go through the budget, I have projected out what it's gonna cost us to maintain our computer equipment in 5-year cycles and maintain our current harbor floats and the life cycles that they are projected at. So in order to meet those needs, we are looking at an annual deposit of $17,000 to the computer reserve to replace all townwide computers, the years they need to be replaced. And for the harbor, we are looking at a $19,000 annual deposit. And that is not, it's been discussed that the lifetime of the floats we have is 25 years is the life expectancy. Some of these, in order to even meet the $19,000 annual deposit, I had to push them out past 25 years because the deposit was just too much to cover in an annual budget. So some of the floats will be replaced between 28 and 30 years.
Basically saying a fee if you take 25 years and
Okay.
the lifespan. The annual fee is just too punitive. You're not gonna get it. $19,000 is already difficult to handle.
Okay.
So you'll see those increases in this year's budget in order to help fund these.
No, those are insured by.
Well, something like with the computers, which span all of the departments,
Yes,
where are you showing that?
it will be
Big
in the,
number.
in the town office budget.
Under the town
And then the computers will be removed from each individual budget.
Okay.
And I just have it. So go ahead.
So those are the two big items that are really important in this year's budget is the computer replacement reserve and the harbor float reserve. Those are the two that are potentially problems, and then the other one was the
Is the
server at the.
ICOP system for the
at-
police department. They need new cameras for the cruisers as well as a new server.
So those three items are, we've worked those into the budget this year. In spite of this not being approved, because when we did this work, then we realized, wait a minute, we're not even close to putting enough money in. What are we putting in for a computer reserve now?
5,000?
5,000?
So,
And it's supposed to be 15, is that what you said?
17.
17.
We ran into a problem, at least over the last year, where we replaced several computers all at once because we were not replacing them on a schedule. This will alleviate that problem.
I had a question.
yeah.
I guess I can't remember. I was looking at this. I didn't look at all of it, but I was looking at some of it. Oh, right here. Town office building expansion, 300,000. Just using that one just as an example. I haven't necessarily observed that we need that, but the whole point of this plan is to do all kind of longer term objectives, as wish listy as they may potentially be. It's a good document that keeps us on track and knows what we want to do. So they're in there, and I don't have to look at them and go, good God, we're trying to spend so much money. This is just every various and sundry thing you could think of, as small, big, medium as they are.
And that will likely get deferred for many
Because
years.
looking at this, it is kind of alarming to look at this.
Well, I mean, one of these ratings is 5 not needed.
Right.
So the idea is that you are providing a comprehensive list.
Right.
And that the rating system gives you the mechanism.
Yeah, at this point, we do not need an addition to the town office. We're fine. But at, 15 years from now.
And I remember hearing when the building was built, it was built with expansion in mind, however long-term that may be. And so this kind of keeps it as a profile, not necessarily a high profile, but
Yeah, there was a drawing that I saw that had an addition on the back of the building, in that space behind the town office, that we have mowed, that there was an addition on the back that sort of mirrored the front piece, but not as big, but, and you could then do a daylight basement and storage underneath.
And one of the biggest goals too is to not see large increases in the budget. And this will help with that. I mean, if you look at the comprehensive plan, you'll see that fiscal year 19, 20, 21, and 22, the amounts are quite regular. I mean, in 19, it's 711,000. In 20, it's 856, and then 883, and then 863. So we're within, except for that first year, we're all within the same dollar figure.
I have a question. I didn't go through this whole thing chapter and verse, but I did look at some of these forms, which are the individual projects. And one of the things at the top says type of improvement, asset or infrastructure, and then one is crossed out for the other one. But I found a lot of them that I was puzzled over. For example, a fire department F-350 replacement truck.
Can you tell me how to get there?
It's
Fire department.
page 45 under the fire department. Calls it an infrastructure improvement, and to my mind, the
Yeah,
truck
that-
is an asset.
So if you look in page 5, it defines a capital asset and capital infrastructure. And there are several criteria that are met for
Dollar value?
each. So like a capital asset has a value of $5,000 or more, it has an estimated useful life of 1 year or more, may include but not limited to computer equipment, office furniture, fleet vehicles, public works vehicles and machinery, emergency response vehicles. But
Right.
then if you look
So,
at the
so
definition
let me stop you
of-
right there. Why does the fire department F-350 truck not fit into that asset category?
because it costs more than
$50,000.
50,000 and it has
Oh.
a useful life of more than 5 years.
Oh,
So a fire truck isn't gonna be either.
550,000
Well,
and
the
has a
public works trucks
lifespan
then.
of 20.
All the public works trucks then would fall into capital infrastructure.
I mean,
Yeah,
the
we-
definitions are provided. You can take issue with the definitions.
Yeah, we might want to look at the definitions.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can, there might be just for a quick read, and particularly if you want to make this more friendly to somebody just logging onto it online, you might want to come up with a third category that's a super asset or something, rather than calling it infrastructure, which almost everybody thinks of as,
roads,
Buildings.
buildings, yeah.
Which it says. Yeah.
I like,
so
write
it's,
that down, super asset.
It's
Yeah,
a good
we-
term.
I like it. Will this be accessible online?
Yes.
Yes, is it yet? Is it online now?
No.
No,
It's still a draft,
Yep.
so.
Yeah, well,
but at some point, we will put it on even as a draft.
effectively, it'll always be a draft if we're updating it every year.
So,
We can work on that definition.
Yeah.
We'll look at that.
Yeah, it's
definition.
just, I guess I didn't look at the definitions, but I
These
intuitively.
were definitions that were used with the other capital improvement items, so that's why I left them like this.
I may be diving into an inappropriate level of detail with this, but I want to come back to something that you said about the computers. And the phrase you said was that you would remove the computers from each category and put them in the town office budget. Is that,
Right now, Public Works has their own computer line. I have my own computer line. Assessing has their own computer line. And in order to fund this plan, the easiest and cleanest way is to charge all those computers to the town office and then update whoever needs to be updated.
so make it an internal decision based on the amount of money that you set aside.
No, it's based on who's due to be replaced. So, for example, if Sue's computer needed to be updated this coming year, but I feel that I need a new computer, I'm not getting the new computer, Sue is getting the new computer.
so I guess what I'm wondering is, I understand it's sort of, you gotta pick something, and I find that a little counterintuitive. Does it make any sense to have a technology hardware tab instead of, you know, which is another tab, instead of sort of,
We had kind of played
Faking
around
it
with
and
the
jamming it
idea
into
of
the
a
town
technology budget, have it be its own department. But with fiber not passing, it's not something, I mean, really all that would be in it would be computers. We could include the Opera House AV equipment, but currently that's all charged to the Opera House. So, I mean, it's something that we could look at.
well, I mean, I assume we're gonna continue, the world is gonna continue to move towards software as a service, so you're gonna increasingly be purchasing less expensive, you know, bulk software packages and rolling those into a monthly fee, I would imagine.
So basically, then you're removing the budget decisions for computers from all the departments. So the Public Works Department, for example, no longer will request a computer in their budget. You'll determine whether they get a computer or not.
Well,
That's
the
not necessarily-
replacement schedule was determined by Gus. So it's definitely flexible. I mean, it's something that theoretically could change every year, but yes.
But his computer totally blows up and is unfunctional. It may mean that we have to say, well, you know, my computer is working fine. I don't need a new computer this year, even though I'm due to be replaced, and somebody else gets the new computer.
But Ken, for your point, I mean, if Abby says, I need a new computer, it's not that she doesn't ask for that in her budget, it's that
Well,
Megan
she
has
will
the responsibility of taking
Right,
that
but-
one thing out of Abby's budget and sticking it into the technology tab.
But it won't, like I say, it won't be in the individual department budgets anymore. That's what I'm hearing.
Right.
Yep.
And that makes sense in terms of, you know, in terms of rounding up. If you got 15 different places where computers are, and somebody says, well, this computer's gonna cost me $15.95, but I'm gonna put in 1,700, and then now all of a sudden there's funds left over and that sort of thing. So having a draw out of one account makes a
Yeah,
lot of sense.
I'm just trying to understand.
And one of the biggest
work, I'm not
things you'll
necessarily-
see that changed in the budget this year is the backup documentation is way more elaborate than it has been in the past. It's right in with the department budget. So, for example, if Abby had requested a new computer, you would see that in her backup documentation.
Okay.
And I think just to tie it up for me in my head anyway, one of the things I typically ask is just about flexibility. And it appears as though the way that you structured it still does add flexibility to do the right thing
Right.
if someone's computer blows up. So it's a way of making it cleaner for you in clerical purposes, but in function and reality, you still maintain flexibility to keep things going and not say, well, too bad your computer blew up.
And we have expensive equipment that needs to be replaced. I mean, the server alone's upwards of $10,000 when it needs to be replaced, so we need to plan for that
And that's
ahead.
part of the 17,000.
Right.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
the place where it works, where we see it works right now is in wastewater. Is we've discussed, there's a bunch of things that are in the capital improvement plan for wastewater, and who knows if they're gonna last as long as we think they are, but we have enough money and enough flexibility, as you said, that if one pump station went down, we may have to say, well, this one's due to be replaced, but we have this one going down, so we're gonna have to make this one work longer so we can get this one fixed. So there is that flexibility, as long as we're putting enough money in every year. And a good example is the wastewater CIP is very, very healthy and very strong. So,
And right now, we don't necessarily have that flexibility.
And not over.
and not over a budget, no, but it's a good plan, and we'd like this plan to be the same.
So I think I understand how this is gonna work. Can you explain to me we do have a capital improvement plan now.
We do.
Can you explain, it's far more limited and it's
Yes.
topic specific. Can you give me a little more detail about?
So if you look in the, let's just do the police department page
27 maybe?
34. There's the police department vehicle replacement schedule.
Yep.
That came right out of the budget. That's part of the capital improvement plan. The fire department has a schedule very similar to this. The public works department has a schedule very similar to this. But really, that's what the plan had been, is our big.
It's really,
heavy
we're
equipment.
expanding this to lots of other categories.
Okay. Other questions? Workshop. Look sometime in late April or May.
Yeah.
Sounds like we may need more than one.
Oh, I think so. I think you're gonna need some time. I mean, I think it's gonna be something that you're gonna have to sit down with a, and do a lot of
Can
work.
anyone tell me how the actual committee's doing and when my responsibility to be meeting with them starts
I
to
don't
take hold?
even know who the committee is.
I sent Alan Mitchell an email and informed him that this was coming out, and then asked Megan to send him a copy of it
One
electronically.
of yours, Mitchell?
No,
different
Alan.
Mitchell.
Alan Mitchell, McCormick Builders, big
Oh.
guy, drives the fire truck.
Oh, no, I get it now. I got a Mitchell in the audience, just making a connection.
Okay.
I would think that they would start doing the lion's share of their work after you had your workshop and you went over it in general, in more specific terms than we're doing here.
The they we're referring to is the capital improvement
Capital
plan.
Improvement Committee, yeah.
Committee.
Yep.
And one of the challenges with the capital improvement plan is, and, you know, unfortunately with the timing of this, the best time to work on the capital improvement plan is usually August, September, so that they'd be working on the capital improvement plan separate from the budget process. The problem is we're working on both simultaneously, and the plan is the plan is the plan, and it should stay the plan. And then when it comes to funding it, that's a budgetary item, and that's part of the budget committee. So
Well,
it's
they haven't met in a long time, and this is a new plan.
Oh,
It
yeah.
will sort of fall into that time
It
frame.
will, yep.
Is that we, if we start working on this workshops
It's a-
in
it's a
April and
ramping
May,
up phase.
Yeah.
it will get down into the work in
Right.
August, September, October.
And then once they get through it, it'll be hard this first time, but then after we've gone through a cycle, doing it annually at that point, that time, it separates it out so that they're working on the plan and the prioritizing and all of that piece separate from the budget. And so what I've seen often is if you do them together, that people will go through and they'll cannibalize the plan in order to make it meet your budget needs. And that's bad. And so, we may have to say, we can't afford that right now when it comes to the budget, but the plan still stays the plan.
Okay.
Right, so
Any
we'll,
other questions on this? No?
thank
This
you,
looks like a
Megan.
lot of work.
It was.
We're not done yet.
And now you can take a break from this and work on the budget.
Starting tomorrow. We
Okay.
have budget
Grab a
meetings
break,
tomorrow.
I think.
Thank you, Megan.
There's been a request that maybe we take a break at this point for 5 minutes.
Everybody's taking their break.
I haven't.
Well, the three of us in the middle.
You gotta keep these things.
It's not
light.
even true at all, though. is it?
Okay,
I was.
we're back in session. Would you
Gaveling
hold it down over there? Thank you. Our next item is sort of a composite of a number of things, all relating to, well, indirectly at least, the library. The first item on it is the listening tour. We had sort of decided that we wanted to do a listening tour. I have been hearing some objections to doing it, that if we do, all we're gonna hear about is the library again, and it's not gonna really accomplish the objective that we had really set out. That is to find out about other things that are going on, what else is on our citizens' mind. So, with that, do we want to? And there is, in our packet, confirmed dates and locations if we want to follow through with them.
I'll start.
All right?
I totally still want to do the listening tour. We talked about this months before the vote in this November. With everything lined up, I don't see how we can necessarily go wrong. Ken, I read your comments, and I think that they're valid, but I don't see how we run the risk of doing harm. It doesn't necessarily interfere with other meetings that we have. It's just simply a way of, again, trying to touch base with all of our different communities. I agree that probably we'll end up talking about the library. We could only hear what have been hearing. We may hear from the same people. But I think potentially one of the misconceptions was we did this listening tour simply in response to the failed library vote, which, because I know that that's not why we set up the listening tour, I'm welcome to be convinced that it's not a good idea, but I still think that there's a lot of merit and worth in trying to connect with the communities and at least having a conversation with them. If it meanders that we come into the village and they want to talk just about library, and we go to Rockville, maybe they want to just briefly touch on the library, but then talk about their sidewalk that's overgrown, or you never know. I still think that there's a decent reason and rationale for having the listening tour.
Bill? I understand your points, and I'm, for one, am willing to give up the listening tour in favor of other stuff that would just, from taking up all our time. But perhaps the best way to approach this whole couple of bullets here is to talk about the decision or the proposal that this board publicly accept certain responsibilities, talk about how we get that done, and then see whether the listening tour as it exists now is still a possibility. Because I agree with you that having these dates now, all the work done into that, and people having some expectation, we have to give that some weight. But I think we're discussing it backwards.
Okay. We have to make that decision on whether or not to do the listening tour tonight.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because one of the things we wanted to do, if we do it,
Right.
is send out the postcards.
No, I get that.
Okay.
But in terms of Owen saying, convince me, I think we ought to go ahead and convince ourselves of other things on this list
Okay.
first, and then say, now that we've done that, whatever it is we've done, do we still have time?
You don't have to do these in the order that they're laid out.
That's what I'm
That just
suggesting.
happened to be the order that they came to my mind in.
Okay. Well, with that in mind,
All right.
You propose that we discuss.
I think we should discuss, it has become clear to me that, looking at it from the listening tour and other things, I supported listening tour, I supported surveys and all that as a way to get information in and as a vehicle then to, and I also mentioned in passing perhaps, or even more so, having a new, very highly technical ad hoc committee that would look at the library and help bring us to speed so that we could make a decision. I think that the very first thing we need to do is to declare that it is our responsibility to make the decisions necessary to present a single proposal, hopefully at the June election. That's a statement of responsibility that I would like this board to support by vote. And then we investigate all that's necessary to fulfill that responsibility.
Can you just state it again?
Yeah.
Can I state it again?
I heard you say that
Right.
you hope the board will affirm a responsibility. I just want you to phrase that responsibility again.
Right. Do I have it written down anywhere? Because I passed the wording on to Bill at least.
You did?
Yeah, I
When
thought
was
it-
that?
So in any event, I would like the board to proclaim a proclamation that it will assume the responsibility for making the necessary decisions to bring to the town of Rockport a proposal about a new library
Okay.
in a timely fashion.
A moment ago, you used the word single proposal.
A
And-
proposal, a single proposal.
And you used a month,
No, I used
which was
June.
June.
He said hopefully in June, I think.
Yeah. And I think I was willing to go and, I was willing to entertain a lot more town involvement prior to a decision, but I think it's really up to us to make a decision. And there are ways for me to be satisfied that we are getting input that we need from citizens and still make June.
So Ken, you circulated some comments where it seemed to me as though the notion of us making a decision was a little bit problematic in terms of the wording or the phrasing of that.
Well, I mean, my comments were just that, we don't get to make the decision. The town gets to make the decision. We get to frame the proposal based on what we've heard. And as I put in my notes to the board, I wanted the survey to happen because I thought it was really the only way that we could gather a large amount of information to help us determine what happened with the vote. But then when I heard people start to say, well, no matter what survey you do, we're not going to trust it, that killed it for me, and it was kind of disappointing. So I guess at this point, I think based on what we've heard through emails and comments at public meetings and letters and whatever communications we've received, this board has to start making some assumptions with the full realization that the assumptions might be wrong. And then move toward what Jeff is suggesting, I think, which is to come up with a proposal based on what we've heard, and it's what we've heard is incomplete. There's no question about that, because we've heard from a much smaller group of people than actually voted in November. And I'm ready to sort of dive in and do that.
So just to play devil's advocate, and because I think there may be some utility in just voicing something else, I have heard, and this is not a view that I espouse, but I have heard people there are some people who would like to have multiple proposals, choices of proposals, and that the citizens should be able to vote on the location of the library directly. That it is that opinion would say that it is not the responsibility of the select board to decide, settle, frame the argument, frame the discussion down to one site. Can we talk through why that may or may not be valid?
Sure, love to.
I think, and I actually thought this myself a couple of months ago. I thought, well, let's put two proposals on the ballot and see which one flies or whatever. But it is a little problematic because you get what happens if they both fail, what happens if
They both pass.
or miraculously if they both pass, which I don't think would happen. But I think by putting one proposal on the ballot, we're still allowing the citizens to choose something else. We may not know what that something else is, but the people have the right to vote against whatever we put on the ballot. If we decide, okay, we're gonna put a library at RES, and we know there's gonna be a group of people that are gonna vote no on that because they wanted it 1 Lime Rock Street. Same thing, if we saw 1 Lime Rock Street, if we put a proposal out there, we know that there are gonna be people who'll vote against it because of the location. So I think in a sense, even by putting one proposal on the ballot, we are, you know, we are gonna get people who favor another proposal who are gonna be able to vote in favor of their proposal by voting against whatever we put on the ballot. And I think, I mean, I've never been a proponent of multiple choice questions because multiple choice questions end up with a non-majority winner in most cases, which means that a majority of people don't select the choice that ultimately prevails. So I just don't think that works. So, you know, my thinking has evolved a little bit on the issue, but I think, you know, the one thing that I do think we need to do is to move forward, and I like the idea of getting something on in June, just because the discourse has been so difficult for such a long time, and I think if we draw it out any longer, it's not going to get any better. So I think we should put something on in June, and in order to put something on in June, I think we'd have to put a single proposal on June, probably on the 1 Lime Rock site, would be my thought there.
Let's make an assumption that we do put something on the ballot. It doesn't matter which one it is, or, you know, but what's gonna be our fallback if it fails?
I think we have to talk about that, and it depends on what we put on the ballot. You know, do we assume, and again, because we didn't do the survey and we've heard from a small number of people, we have to make some assumptions about sort of the general idea of the electorate. I made an assumption when we met last in December. I said I thought 45% wanted a library at 1 Lime Rock, 40% wanted it at Arias, and 15% don't want it at all. Rick has a different opinion on those numbers, and you can monkey around with those numbers, but I think there's 3 major groups right there that we have to address.
I'm worried that we're drifting from the original topic, though, which was whether or not we have a responsibility to do this.
Okay. So, obviously, having stated that, I think we do. To look at the option of saying maybe we don't, or multiple plans. The value in a multiple plan is for someone to have the benefit of the exercise of looking at all the facts. And what I'm proposing is that our method, after we declare and say, yes, it is the select board's, you know, somebody's got to do it. It's the select board's duty to take the reins here on out. And we can incorporate all those elements of, I'm a person who favors RES. I think that it's going to be cheaper to build there. It's a flat site and all that. In our need to come up to technical speed, we're going to address all of those issues. And personally, being a long-winded kind of guy, I would address it in the form of a document where someone says, 2 months ago, I brought this point up at a meeting, you know, that I said at a meeting, I thought it was going to be better for this. Why, look, they've asked that question. They've asked it of several experts. Here's the board's response. Bum, bum, bum. In the end, this is what the board decides. And
So you view this as a multi-step process
Absolutely.
between now and when we have to
Absolutely.
have that final wording put on the warrant for June.
And to be clear, I think that it's this board's duty, because we're not going to assign another ad hoc library committee. I think it's this board's duty to do all the things, even if we're repeating stuff, but to do all the things that the last ad hoc committee did, down to having a drawing, having, you know, good handle on cost and all that. And a good handle on the split, because it'll have to be a bond issue, a split between public and private funding. What I don't think will be helpful is to say, do you like this? You know, I want to come up for the June ballot with the proposal. Do you like it? Yes. Do you like it? No. Not a, do you favor, you know, building a library? It's just like, this is what we've come up with. And we've talked to all these people. We've had people listening to these conversations. What I'm not interested in is having 12 meetings where there's a lot of, there'd be workshops where if the public, quite frankly, if the public had more input, they would write them down on cards and we would be asking questions of the experts. But I want people there. I want them to witness the questions. I want them to be a part of it, but I really want it to be orderly, because that's the only way we're going to get this much work done in that time.
Well, the issue that I would have is what you're describing is doing what the last ad hoc planning committee just did.
Yep.
But instead of cramming it into December through September, we're cramming it into late January through late March.
But we're starting at a much more advanced position.
We're riding on the shoulders of all the
And-
work.
and
But,
we're-
it-
and
but
we're
you're
riding on the
talking
shoulder.
about having a design and having cost estimates and all of that, all done within 2 months.
No, all done within, backing up from June, backing up from the June date, what do we have for public
Sometime in
notice?
August, sometime in April it has to.
August, I'll take it.
No, sometime in April,
April, I'd have to have the wording
yeah.
Yeah,
for an article.
so yes, if we don't assemble another group of experts that can then be talking to us once a week, we're the people that are gonna have to conduct those meetings, so yes. It's very aggressive, but it's also, I mean, what's our alternative? We can go around in circles without a rudder. I yield.
So one of the things that I feel that I've said at a lot of the meetings post, even pre November vote where the library got rejected, was the lack of clarity around a direction we should be heading in as it relates to hearing from the citizens. And it's based on the fact that we've, over the last handful of years, had multiple votes, all related to the library, where folks that are in favor of One Lime Rock can stake claim to a failed vote for RES, and the RES folks can stake claim to a failed One Lime Rock, and then both sides can stake claim to a failed most recent attempt. And even though I am strongly in favor of the select board showcasing leadership, taking this on, being comprehensive, and putting yet another proposal in front of them, I think that the possibility of failure without clarity for us on our end is, again, a high probability. We even said, we'll discuss what a failed June vote of a singular, would say One Lime Rock pared down on cost, more aesthetically pleasing, blah, blah, blah. That could also fail. And we frequently use the term, the elephant in the room is the location. And though I don't think it's feasible to have a comprehensive site plan for the RES site, we do have that for the One Lime Rock site in certain senses. I definitely see a decent amount of worth in letting the two articles compete. RES, One Lime Rock, let the citizens decide whichever one gets the most amount of votes is our preferred site. And I know that setting up for another November vote with competition for the new middle school is less than desirable. I think that the citizenry is smart enough to realize that this, we've had conversations about middle school, we've had conversations about library, these are both things. So yes, there is a possibility that it could fail simply because it's on another Warren article with a $26 million middle school. But I think allowing a head-to-head of the two most prominent sites that there are two very strong factions for in town has a lot of merit to it. Please.
So, if you wanted to be fair to both sites, you would go ahead and you would have preliminary designs.
Nope.
Why not? It's to go site to site. That's a fairly easy set of information that you can determine and then put out there. But
I thought you were saying
don't
with
have-
little pictures on it.
I am saying you have to get as much information on the RES site as you already have on the Lime Rock site, which is to say you have to commission an architect. We spent $40,000 to get where we are now. What you're saying, if present two fully mature proposals,
No.
You're just saying,
I'm just saying
do
sites.
you want to see the library at 1 Lime Rock Street, or do you want to see the library at RES? Period, end of statement.
No sketches, no
No
buildings, no
sketches,
site
no
plans,
cost
no-
estimates, no
Jeff and I
nothing.
talked about this briefly this morning, and I do agree with you that scenario of a head-to-head is very emotional. It lacks a lot of the technical knowledge that may turn someone's emotion for a site to be a more comprehensive understanding. Technically, I get it. Even though I want to see it here, I understand why this site could be more desirable or vice versa. And that's what you do get from these expensive, but architecturally done site plan review, drafting, comprehensive whatevers. But because this is a very emotional topic for the town, I just see that at least on the site, we've got clarity. We've got clarity. We know that 52% of the citizens wanted it RES or 1 Lime Rock. One of them won. Yes, there's an awkward scenario under which both of them fail or both of them pass, though I don't see that as a high likelihood. I just think that takes that conversation off the table. It's less than desirable, but it's done.
It's so far less than desirable because we're not building a site, we're building a library. And you have to look at what is a library at each of the sites. If you're gonna, and I propose that this committee can do that in abstract with 5 people, with 5 people making the decision and calling on experts. I absolutely understand and I agree with you on the emotional aspect of it. I don't agree with you on how you get to taking care of the people of, let's say it's half and half in the town. One site's going to end up winning, whether it's end up winning because we take the heat for it, or whether it ends up winning because we take 2 proposals all the way to the end, and then now we have a whole nother, if an undeveloped site, if RES with no drawings, no building, no nothing passes, you got another 6 months to a year before you even put something else on the ballot
For the bond, yeah.
for a bond. So now you've pushed the library off another year and a half.
And that bond then could go down to defeat.
Absolutely. So what I'm saying is that it's disingenuous to only look at the site because you're choosing a site with which to put a library on. We're farther down the road now than we were before. We have a reasonable idea of the size that we need, the size that we want, the size that people don't want, and cost and all that.
But how can you state that? It failed. Why did it fail?
Okay, if we were to go back and
Let's
okay,
get back away from an argument here on
Right.
this.
Okay.
I'm gonna
wasn't
ask
arguing.
our other 2 members to say something. Let's
I
get our
think-
thoughts.
I think that if you're looking at a vote sold with just with the site only and no building, that cuts out the people who are gonna argue that I don't want a new library because my taxes are gonna go up. And we don't know how big that number of people is. And like Jeff said, one of those, if you have a vote of 2 choices, one of them is gonna come out on top. But then you go do the work and you put the proposal out and it may fail. So I don't think that having a vote solely on the site serves us very well at this point. I think this board has to take the heat and make the call on that.
To do a site vote, we'd have to have at least 2 questions.
You'd have to have 3, right?
No.
Site A, Site B, I don't want a library at all.
Or, I don't care.
let's see.
That doesn't get us the information
I
we
know,
need.
well,
Oh, I don't care about
but
the
that's,
site?
yeah, I don't care which site, just put one there.
I just wanted to follow up on what Ken said, which is, we could define what the site is by a head-to-head vote simply on the sites, and then we could develop a plan for that site, and then that plan itself could fail. But at least we have a much clearer picture as to the why. We can't then argue was it size, was it cost, was it aesthetics, or was it the site? We can take that site bit off of there. That no longer exists as part of why did this proposal fail.
Okay, let's step back a moment here and let's talk, okay, if you're gonna say site to site, what about the people that don't want a library? What about the people that don't care which site it's on? You know, if you're just, you know, this isn't high school where you get a multiple choice question. It's vote for one, A, B, C, or D. And then, you know, but again,
The people
one of
that-
them, you're almost guaranteed not to have something come up with more than 50%.
Then the people that, on subsequent votes, the people that
When-
don't care which site it is will either vote in favor of it because they like it or not, and then the people that don't want it at all just will vote against it.
I'm going to interrupt you here. Let's say 1,000 ballots are cast. One Lime Rock comes up with 400 votes. RES comes up with 401 votes. Neither of them had 50%.
Well,
Yeah.
we're talking,
not
we're
making
talking
myself clear.
winning as opposed to process.
Yes.
If I was just a citizen and I wasn't sitting on this board and I wasn't willing to take the heat for this decision, and I had two proposals in front of me, I would have to make all those decisions anyway. An informed voter would make all the decisions of what size is the building going to be, how is it going to be situated on this site, all these things, how much is it going to be? And that's going to inform my opinion of which is a better site. Now, for instance, for somebody like Ames, she's already come before us and said several times that parking is a big issue. She's already come in front of us and said that she feels is that a flat level site
Single
is
story.
a single is a cheaper thing to do. She hasn't had any that I heard any preference on single versus two-story, but certainly Ben at this point is favoring single. Is that
If the building needs to be smaller, which it sounds like people are pushing, I will advocate strongly for a one-level
okay?
building, because then we can keep a larger program in a smaller building
Okay.
by eliminating stairwells and elevators.
So take someone, we'll pick on names for a second. In order for her to be convinced that the other site, the village site is appropriate, you have to convince her that parking's gonna be okay. You have to convince her the price is gonna be okay, and you have to convince her that there's not a big difference in the cost of where you are. If in our, now it may not go this way because I'm not an expert, but if we have construction people and we have architects and what have you that we're asking in the next 2.5 months, and we say, tell us about this. We have, somebody suggests that it's cheaper to go flat. And they say, yeah, it helps here and it helps here, but oh, by the way, that site is monstrously wet, and you're not going to put a building on RES. And oh, by the way, this, that, and that. We start to take those things in and put it in a matrix. Now, in the end, we still, as individuals, we still get to say, you know what, I want to go with this. I want to go with that. So, but I think that the process of coming up with one site, even if it's a split vote, is going to be faster, better, and higher quality than if we can take everyone along for the ride of learning as we do, but we make the decision, which I think an awful lot of people in town, I think people on both sides are saying, oh my God, just selectmen, do your job. And I think this is part of our job. So we're going to recreate that same decision tree, but faster because it's only 5 people, that a well-informed voter would make in the long run. We're just going to have that vote that you want to have in June about the site. We're going to have that 8 weeks from now.
But it's just going to be us voting.
It's just us, as part of the process of coming to a single proposal.
So I'd like to say 2 things. The first thing is that I think we do a disservice to our voters when we say that because they feel strongly, they are being emotional. I've spoken with many people who feel that their rationale is rational, not emotional. They feel strongly, but it's out of ration. The second thing I'll say is that I'm not sure if I heard you correctly right then, but I don't think the five of us are going to go through a process and arrive at the conclusion that any reasonable voter would arrive at.
Tell me about that.
I think reasonable voters are going to arrive at different conclusions on this topic.
And it may be reflected in the individual directions and votes of this board.
But just because we don't arrive at the same conclusion that the people in the town would arrive at, to me, that's not a problem. We were asked to answer these kinds of questions and make these kinds of decisions. I think it's our responsibility, because of how contentious this topic has become, that we need to put a stop to it. And that's why we should.
Phrase it right that way, but
I mean,
I won't,
That's why we should do it.
just make a decision.
I don't actually. I'm
Recommendation.
with Jeff about the process.
Oh,
I do
okay.
not want to make an arbitrary decision. I want to show people that we have heard what they've said. I would like to do a bit of the devil's advocate, even if we are in agreement with each other, and say, all right, well, you appear to be coming down for this site. What do you say to these issues that we've heard from the voters? I don't think we need a lot of feedback from the public, because I think we've had it, but I do think we need to do that process in front of them.
yeah, I agree, and in my memo, I laid out, what I thought we need to say, and I'm not gonna go into it right now, but we do need to address every group of voters. And we do need to say that we heard them.
yeah.
And we need to say to them that, because I do believe, whether I agree or disagree with any individual voter, I do believe that almost everybody we've heard from has come from, yes, there's emotion involved, but there is some rationality. The people who have come with us have come with very reasoned arguments about why they feel the way they feel, about the size of the library, about the site of the library. We have to indicate that we heard that. And I think we have to incorporate pieces of what we've heard from everybody into whatever final proposal we put before the town. Like I said, we don't get to decide. We do get to, and it's our responsibility, I think, at this point, to craft a proposal that, from what we've heard, we think the voters will favor. And from what we've heard from them and all over the last many months. I was going to go somewhere else and I forgot. But I think I do. I actually like Jeff's idea about the process. I think that's a good way for us to do it. And as somebody else, I forget who said, I don't think we necessarily need to hear any more public comment. We've heard we know what we're going to hear. Sally's out there in the audience. If she came up and talked to us tonight, I know what she would say.
Could I just remind you once more of the votes that have been cast,
We were well aware of them.
Well aware of those.
Well aware of them.
including the 2013?
Yeah, we're well aware of all those things, and so, it's,
That's actually a good illustration, if I can jump in here. What we need to do is, for the next 3 months, step away from entertaining conversations where someone's trying to convince you to go one way or the other. We need to make the best informed decision that we can make. And so I would listen to Sally all day long talking about how do we, the five of us, gather the information that we can make a really good decision. For once in my life, because I'll let people talk forever and ever, but I think you're right. I think that we've heard people's positions. Oh, come over to my side. What I want to do is I want to be one of the five most knowledgeable people about the options, so that we can do our job and lead the others, or at least present something that we can stand behind.
And the process has to be transparent. This, as Brendan said, we have to have our conversations in front of people, and the streaming
Yeah.
allows us to do that,
Yeah.
and we can have an audience here, and there's no problem with that at all. But people in the end have to, whether they agree with us or whether they don't agree with us, they have to be able to say, well, I saw their process and I know where they got it. I don't agree with it, but I saw that they considered everything, and then they made a decision.
And I think that that starts to heal the rift as much as people getting their way. Is to say they really listened.
Look, I don't know if it will or it won't, but we
I don't
still
know.
have to do it.
It's my hope, yeah.
Because you're absolutely right when you said, Brendan, we can't let this go on anymore. And that was one of the points I made in the letter that I sent out to the board members, is that the environment on this issue in Rockport right now is toxic. We have to change that. And so what I would suggest, based on looking at the, moving on to the listening tour schedule, I would suggest we use those dates to do what Jeff is talking about. The listening tour, and Owen mentioned, what's the harm in not doing the listening tour right now? I think the harm is that we will not hear from the people on all the other issues we want to hear about. The police chief, pathways, recreation opportunities, there's a whole bunch of stuff.
Broadband.
Broadband, exactly, what the technology committee, we won't hear about that stuff if we do a listening tour now. And having done one before, and Bill, Jeff, and I are the only ones sitting on this board who did it before, it's a lot of time and it's a lot of energy. And I would hate to expend that and miss an opportunity to hear from citizens on all these other topics that are important to the town.
Yep. I'd also point out, we've set these, tentatively set up these dates. They're crammed into 3 weeks. And we're done with them by the middle of February. Once we hit March, we're not gonna be doing a whole lot of meeting with each other on this topic. We're gonna be spending it on budget.
Yep.
And that continues on into April.
From a practical standpoint, could a portion of this board meet during those times where we're busy with the budget? I'm just trying to determine.
If you're into March and haven't made a decision,
We're not doing our work,
you're done. I mean, I suspect if you don't make a decision in the next, at this meeting or meeting very quickly on site, on location, we will miss the opportunity to get it on the June ballot. I think, I mean, maybe that's not what we do, but I think the opportunity to get something on the June ballot, something concrete that the voters can have a sense that they can vote on, I think we'll miss the opportunity if it's not done, because there's still a lot of work to do.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of work.
But the issue of site is site selection people, professional site selection people, they don't wrestle with this problem the way we're wrestling with it. They wrestle with it in a totally different way. It's
In private sector, you mean?
in
Or-
private sector, yeah. They're
They're not beholden.
Right. And they base their site selection people, it's totally unemotional, which regardless of how it is, everybody's emotional about this subject. Maybe it's based on rationality, but there's a lot of emotion that's going on. And their job is they look at every site and they're looking for a reason to remove that site from the running. They're not looking at the positive things of the site, of why this site would work or over this site. They're looking at a reason to remove your site from the running. And, it's a very concrete and clear, unemotional process. We're gonna be you're discussing this like we're gonna be asking the voters to vote based, they're voting based on emotion. And I mean, I know Ken doesn't totally agree with me, but as I said in my notes to you, I think we are struggling with between 40 and 50% of the voters simply do not want their taxes to go up, period. And, you know, there's a certain, you know, we could convince them if we had the opportunity to put something in front of them that was clear, concise, and a bunch of people got behind. But, you know, I suspect that there's a large number of people that simply just are voting, right now are voting their pocketbook.
And if that's the case, then we have to convince everybody who wants a new library to agree on one
I think
site.
some of those people, though, some of that 40 to 50%, I think you can win those people over to saying, you know what, I know I don't use the library, but you know what, with a good, compelling argument, and that it's not going to cost a ton of money, and it's a compelling argument, and this is the best we can do, some of those people will vote yes.
Rick, where do you get
I
that
think
40
that
to
w-
50% number from?
Gut feeling.
Same place I get mine, guessing.
Just gut. My
For
gut.
whatever it's worth, I find that really unhelpful. To be throwing those kinds of numbers around as though they are
We have
something
nothing
other
else.
than a guess.
At a certain point, you have to go on your gut feeling.
You gotta make assumptions, and I
Right.
don't necessarily agree with Rick's assumption on that number, but it may be higher than the number that I'm guessing at. And because we didn't do the survey, and we're not gonna do the survey, as I said, we have to make some assumptions.
I agree with that.
But each perspective is good for us to remind us the different constituencies we're going with. And I think that there are some people in town, and I won't put a percentage on it, but there are some reasonable people who reasonably feel that they don't want to spend their money, but just seeing good, solid decision-making or hearing about it, which is going to be as likely as anything, and saying, yeah, the select board is really working hard to answer all these questions, all this input that we've gotten. And I would be happy to volunteer to do the first matrix of all of the, you know, because I have copious notes on the meetings themselves, plus we have all the letters written, and just bring out all the points. And we would, in the process of us making our decision, it would be responsible for us to get expert answers on all those points. I didn't just volunteer for something.
I think you did.
Yeah, that actually just changed my
My-
mind about
I
the
was
whole
wondering, do you really
thing.
have time to do that?
Wait, you put me over the top, man.
I'll help you.
Okay, we have two volunteers. The question then, and you said, take these dates that we have already selected and use them for this. But you also said we want to be able to have it live streamed.
I said
And
do it
record
here.
You're here.
Do it here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have no clue as any of these dates really have an opening here in the building. I know one of them doesn't because I know on the 25th, the planning board is meeting right here.
Right.
Now, they're meeting at 5:30. I don't know how long they take,
Do you have a calendar?
and if we could fall in behind it, but I don't know if we even want to try something like that.
You guys are talking as though
February
like
calendar
my
hasn't been-
opinion didn't matter.
Yeah,
like
no,
you're moving on with this. I was gonna
We need
come
to get,
on
we
now.
need to get back to it.
Okay.
Here's my 2 or 3 cents. All right.
Gonna be up to a quarter
He's
before.
in
I
the-
know.
It's
Here's
gonna
my
go
bucket
up,
of
yeah.
quarters. All right.
Remember,
And a
he's playing
$100
with our
bill in
money.
there too. I don't necessarily disagree with the conversation that you all had about Jeff's process. That was very much similar to where I was at last month. I just felt like some folks via email and phone calls, et cetera, I did start to really see some worth to a head-to-head competition for the sites. So it was decided that elephant in the room was decided by the citizenry, and then we go and do our job afterwards. But if you had asked me last month, when I wanted to just vote on something, anything, to show leadership and continue this ball rolling in a good way. So yeah, I just wanted to say that the process of which you laid out, Jeff, and was agreed to by, it appears, the majority of folks on this board, I'm not opposed to at all. It's a solid rationale. It shows good leadership on us. It gets it out there, and it at least gives us a document too that we can say, here's why we made the decision that we made. Just wish you had done it last month before people convinced me of other things.
You're allowed to change your mind too.
I do frequently.
Yeah, I noticed.
Okay, okay. So where are we going here?
Applebee's. That's the first thing that came to mind.
Well,
Sorry, my
if
bad.
needed, I can make a motion that we use these dates subject to schedule changes as needed.
Well, I think the very first
motion
thing.
really ought to be that we're going to adopt this responsibility,
Yeah.
right? That we are going to
Do a
work toward
head-to-head.
single proposal.
Oh, I got you, Bill?
No, no. The process Jeff has laid out is a head-to-head.
Well,
It just doesn't go to a vote in June. We take that information and make the decision to take to the voters.
I think it's more than a head-to-head, because I think what we're talking about doing is far more than site selection.
Yeah,
We're just
we have
gonna
to
begin
talk
with
about- We
site
have to talk
selection.
about size of the building, we have to talk about funding mechanisms,
Mm-hmm.
you know, bonding and all that kind of stuff.
We should be somewhat deliberative, though, in what we talk about first, second, and third. Like, for me, size of the building should not be our starting point for conversation. Not that that's what you were saying, Ken, but being also very structured in the order and flow of what we discuss during these meetings, so it follows a logical.
Have to be productive meetings.
You have to get A figured out to get to B,
Okay.
and then you get B figured out.
So that's all mechanics. The first thing is, I will make a motion that I move that the Rockport Select Board acknowledges and accepts the responsibility. I'm gonna slow up here so my brain can catch up.
Yeah, that was
To present to the
never a problem.
citizens of Rockport a single comprehensive proposal on a new library.
To be
Put a
proposed in
date on it.
June.
No, I mean, I would love for it to be June, but all right, I can put a date on it. Available in June.
What does putting the date on it really add?
I mean,
I
we,
was just asking, I wasn't, you know,
It
I
adds
think it put the
clarity.
lights of fire under us to a
Yeah.
certain extent.
oh, I think we got fires.
When discussion percolates in town, part of the discussion will be about the dates we've chosen as well. That's one of the benefits of.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
With
a
an
date to it.
expected delivery in time for a June ballot.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion.
I don't have to remember what I said, do I?
Been seconded. Well, we have the recording.
It's recorded.
All you gotta do is back
No,
it
no,
up.
but just in case. Thank you very much.
She's the only one.
Kevin, you gotta know what you're voting on.
In fact, actually, if you were watching having the live stream
Oh, there
presented
is that
to her,
15
it'd be a
second.
Linda, would you
5-minute
mind
delay.
reading back what you have?
Okay, the motion was that the Rockport Select Board acknowledge and accepts the responsibility to present to the citizens a single comprehensive proposal on a library with an expected delivery date for June. But
Okay.
Yeah.
It's been moved, it's been seconded. Discussion. Owen?
I might have changed the expected to a goal, but that's fine.
My brain's just playing catch up.
Okay.
As I said,
Yeah,
we're
expected
gonna,
goal.
we're gonna have to make assumptions to do this. And some of the assumptions, we have to acknowledge up front that we may make wrong assumptions. And that but I think
I submit that even if we'd done the survey, we would still be making assumptions about some of this stuff.
probably, I would have felt more, but anyway, that's not gonna happen, so.
We would be assuming.
So, but we
based
have
on
to
the
go,
meeting.
I think the people want to hear us push this to a resolution sooner rather than later. And I think this is a way to do that, for better or worse. Whatever we propose may fail in June. We can't predict that. All we can do is put out a proposal that's, we think is reasonable, that we think reflects the will of the voters that we've heard from. and hopefully the ones that we haven't heard from too, and it's fiscally prudent and all that kind of stuff. That's our responsibility, is to put something before the voters that's in the best interest of the town.
So, I agree with everything you just said. I have some anxiety about the deadline and a desire to see this process through correctly
Would you be?
as being more important than that June deadline. Although it is a strong goal of mine to meet that deadline. The process needs to work.
If
we-
the
we
second
need-
agrees, I'd be happy to change that to a goal of June rather than expected.
I'm fine with that.
You've got a comment from the floor.
I just, can I say something? Don't have to.
Yeah.
Yep, you should.
Okay. I think the timeline of June is doable, under sort of one or two assumptions, really. That you continue to work with Reed and Company architects, because they've got all that groundwork laid already. I don't think doing a new design, if you were looking at other designs, at the one Lime Rock site that's smaller and different, I think they could do that fairly quickly. But I think you need to, when you're thinking of your timeline, have the architectural company that you're working with, their sort of time availability in your mind. Because if you're going to work with them in such a, and I'm saying this from working with the ad hoc library committee, we put a lot of pressure on them, and they work with us really well, but we need to be respectful of what they're willing to do for you in the meantime. So I like this. I'm happy to move. I'm happy to do all the work and to be with you everywhere, but I'm just saying, once you make these decisions, I would check in with the other party that's going to really be putting their time in with us on this. So that's all I got.
Just building on that super quick, we, the last meeting, maybe it was the one with Emily Lusher, I can't remember exactly. We were all kind of on agreement that we had no desire to really switch architectural. I didn't. I was happy with Reed and Company, felt like they brought a lot to the table, very professional. That's not something we're
The only way we get to June is if we keep them.
Keep Reed.
I think if we go to another firm, I think we don't have time.
I'm going to entertain comments from Sally at this.
Thank you. Just one more comment. I think you're still totally avoiding the elephant, and that you must make a decision about the location before you go on about architects and size and thing. And Owen, I completely disagree with your analysis. There hasn't been one vote against each site. There was a vote in 2013.
Though, Sally, I'm going to cut you off there because those are votes in the
Okay.
past, they're historical record. He'll be up to speed.
Okay, but I mean, listen to the voters.
Well, that's part of the matrix that,
But the decision, your first decision, must be on location.
So let me make it clear that I don't want to mirror the voters. I want this board to make a decision themselves. Just like you made your decision, I'm going to make a decision, and all of us are going to make a decision. However, in this particular case, because it took us 5 years to get here, this decision is going to be an important one.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is getting up to speed in a very, very technical way. Everybody else in town can follow along and absorb what they can and want to, and they can be talking to us all the time about that, because it's going to come down to factual information, and then each of our individual relative importance. You know, to me, parking might be more important. To Ken, that might be more important. So, and I don't mean to be rough, but the whole convincing thing is not going to work, because we're going to go through the same process that you did to get to where you are. We're going to do it. You know, we have a lot of balls in the air. That's the thing.
Okay, Rick made the comment about a large number of voters that are sort of silent, but probably a majority. And I think they have not been listened to right along through this whole process.
Okay, we have the motion. It's been seconded. It is now reads goal. Goal.
With a goal.
You agreed to that word change that Jeff proposed, based off of what Brendan had felt more comfortable with. So instead of specific, it is a goal of a June vote. We have further discussion on this. No? All in favor? That is unanimous.
If an architectural firm that happened to be local said we would like you to consider us, I had an interesting conversation with someone, and they brought up the fact that sometimes architectural firms are very amenable to the areas in which they function in, and that if we did broaden it out again and attempted to grab an architectural firm that was local, there may be additional benefits beyond simply drawings and blueprints.
Well, the good news is the proposal doesn't say anything, regardless of our conversation.
I know, and I'm building on my own previous statement of we're all comfortable with Reed and Company, which I still am, but it was just it was an interesting concept that someone put out to me that sometimes there's more perks than just blueprints that come out
I
of.
mean, it's an audacious undertaking to do all that work, for an architect to do all that work in that time frame. If we find there's someone willing to do that, whether they're local, or not.
Well, the other thing I think we have to be a little careful of in this is the town's purchasing policy and things like that. Because I think we currently have a relationship with Reed. They went through the competition of an RFP and they were chosen, and we still have a relationship with them. If we're going to open it up to somebody else, then I think we have to follow the policies and go through.
How does that process work? Were there other architects in that?
Yeah, we had,
yeah,
what,
yeah.
8, 10?
So there were a bunch of architects that
Time
have already
periods, too.
invested a lot of time, some of them local, some of them not. I would submit to you, one, that it would take a brave architect to come and say, I can do it in this time frame. I'm not discounting the possibility. I have a feeling that there's maybe at least one firm that would do that. Secondly, though, if for instance, that architect says, I've already done this work, and I'd be happy to build on it pro bono, it doesn't even come in under the policy, and we could conceivably have, all that information leading to a June ballot for free. That's a possibility. But I think that becomes part of, we have a bunch of questions that we need to ask assembled panel of experts, and I think each of the meetings, to your point, in terms of what comes first or what comes second, would have meetings where we say, this meeting we're going to deal with parking site, physicality of site, blah, 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 and then we handpick people from the community who can help us with that. And then the next meeting has to do with other stuff, with programmatic stuff, for instance. Okay, if we accept the pressure to go to less, the one thing we do have is Reed and Company and everybody else have terrific conceptual and physical drawings on what space will work. And I think that it'll be a question, but I think that the question of, does this work as a basis?
You're making, I think, the assumption when you say that Reed has those drawings, that we are going to come down on the Lime Rock site.
Yeah.
No, because you can still translate that hard work into the other site with perhaps some modifications. But like the exercise that Ben handed us was essentially taking those drawings and saying, now I'm going to pretend it's a single story, and I'm going to take out those things that relate to conveyance to the second floor. Likewise, while I'm quite adamant that overall a design, you can't just take that design from in town and put it at RES because it's very site specific. The inside and the usage of space, keeping in mind the advantage of contiguous spaces that they've already thought about, that's valuable information. But again, Brendan, in a forum with 6 people, 3 local architects, a construction guy, and this, that, and the other thing, we can ask that question. We could say, how much of this is useful? Can we come up with how the buildings are different on each site because of their site, and what's the cost of each of those buildings in a rough way? Those are all things that we're going to have to go over in order to make that informed decision.
So, I don't have the full context of what it is that Sally's referring to when she talks about, what we're still not hearing. I do think that I share her assessment that there is a most important decision, a first decision in the decision tree. And whether or not I'm right about that, whether or not everybody on the board agrees with me, I find value in that decision tree concept. We've just said, this is our job. So the next thing is to ask ourselves, how are we going to do that job?
Right.
So speaking in abstract terms, we need to, I believe, list all of the factors that we're going to consider.
Yeah, that's what the
And then
matrix is that you
prioritize
two are
that
working
list
on.
in some way.
I'm with you up to the prioritize. If we do an
I'm
instant,
not saying it needs this gets a weighting of 6.4. I'm
Right.
just saying we need to hash it out between us that not all of these factors carry the same weight,
absolutely.
and so we need to hash that out and communicate to the public that process.
And I think you're right, and I see a critical discussion based on my numbers guess and Rick's numbers guess is which is more important, site or cost? I don't know what the answer to that is, but we have to figure it out.
I mean, they have to go hand in hand, which is why, while I agree that we answer both elephants at roughly the same time, I don't think that means that they're done in the first week. I think that we have to ask the preponderance of the questions in order to put that all together. Because what we have to do is we have the unenviable task of imagining a building at each place. We have to go through the whole thing. This is why this is our biggest challenge is that we have to, in a compressed time frame, present to ourselves 2 buildings at 2 sites. We don't have to go through the I like brick or I like clapboard, but we do have to have enough information to be fair, because whichever site we don't choose, we have to be able to point to those people, to the people who support that site. This is why this site didn't make it for us.
So I hear what you're saying, and I'm just going to give you an example of how somebody might differ in their rationale. When you come up with all of these factors, you could decide that you give the greatest weighting by a huge margin to that which you believe will pass. And I don't care about size, and I don't care about cost, and I don't care about location, and I don't care about aesthetics. I want this done. I could approach this from that perspective.
Sure. If you did, wouldn't all those things be part of that decision? I mean, certainly the cost would be part of that decision, wouldn't it?
You could only do it if you believe you know which levers to pull, right?
Or you bring the whole thing down to a point where it's got to pass.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, you're not going to know.
Yeah.
But my point is that we have to decide as a group how we're going to do the job that we just said we were going to do.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I get that, and that is possibly not a 5-person job, but a 1 or 2-person job to at least come up with the initial process
That's what
of that.
you had already
Pretty sure you volunteered for
volunteered,
that.
and I remember hearing Brendan
Check the
saying he
minutes
would
on that.
assist
I'm
you.
pretty sure.
I thought I said I work in the Matrix. Okay.
Well, that's it.
That's all right, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, taken with that. This is now the 9th
How the income
of
is-
January.
Yep.
We already know that we're not gonna be able to meet in this room on the 25th. How long is it gonna take you to put together a matrix? Or at least the draft of a matrix,
Or a decision tree.
a
whatever you wanna
decision
call it.
tree, or whatever you wanna call it,
I'll have you something very substantial in a week.
okay? Our next select board meeting is on the 23rd. Do we want to have that on the discussion?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay,
it's got to be. Yeah, we got to,
My only comment to that would be, do we want to do it within a regular select board meeting, or do we want to have a meeting where that's the only topic?
We can gavel out into a workshop, can't we?
but again, we have the other business that we will have to attend to.
It's only so many hours. I'm
And-
willing
yeah.
to take another meeting evening if others are.
How heavy is that meeting gonna be, Bill? The second meeting of this month?
I didn't bring it with me, but it has our liaison reports in it, which is approximately as long as what our current discussion has been.
no.
You won't have that darn,
But we will, well,
Manager's
no, we're gonna have an update from you. Just those things that we have to know right
I'm
now.
gonna hear all about those functioning credit card machines.
yep.
Only if you ask.
And that Rick sets up a tent at Summer Street, so he
So,
keeps it clear.
let's stay on this topic. Let's not go to Summer Street.
It's a dangerous condition.
18th, 18th is a Wednesday, which the library likes to be in here. 19th, 20th.
I can't make it the 19th. I can make it on the 20th.
What type of day is that?
That's a Friday.
That's inauguration day.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, Trump sent you tickets, didn't he, Bill?
He
Sorry.
probably would have sent them to Jeff sooner than me.
Okay, we're derailed. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah, you did it.
I partly.
Now we just, all those people who are nicely watching us, and now half of them are all pissed off.
So what day are we looking at?
Well, do we want to do it on a Friday, or do we, oh, I can't do it
Don't
that day.
have-
I got in-laws coming.
Please don't do
The
it on
20th.
Friday.
Friday don't mean
Yeah.
nothing to me.
And Bill,
What
we've
about the
got-
24th?
Bill, we've got
exhausted.
solid waste on the 25th too.
Oh, you're right.
So good
Yeah,
thing.
I didn't even look at that arrow. Yeah. Ken, I know it's a Tuesday.
One Tuesday once in a while is okay.
Which Tuesday?
Tuesday the 24th?
Just not the best day for me, but
Yeah.
I just don't want to be meeting every Tuesday.
Yeah.
I got a child's concert I'd really like to be at.
Okay.
24th.
Well, you want to do it the
What time,
17th?
Well,
I would move
I
it
can
up
do the
if you could.
17th.
Will you have something by the 17th that we can,
Well, I better.
okay.
I don't, it's Brendan's fault.
7 PM here?
7 p.m.
okay.
We're calling this a special library
Workshop.
workshop.
And after that, I would suggest that we use the dates that we've already
Yeah.
vetted for the listening tour times, except for the 25th.
Okay.
That meeting is here.
But,
Yep.
but I would have all the meetings here so that we have this meeting,
Yes.
you know, that's important. Because I think, quite honestly, we're going to get more people that are going to tune in online than are going to show up to the West Rockport Baptist Church or whatever location.
Okay.
Are these all going to be meetings, or are they going to be a hodgepodge of workshops with meetings, depending on what we're trying to accomplish that evening?
Depending on what we're trying to accomplish that evening.
Cool.
And we will not have it on the 4th. That's a Saturday. Or do you want to have one on the 4th?
Why not?
Oh,
I would hold open the possibility anyway. I mean, why not? I think that's. I think
Okay.
that if we're in the position of not needing a meeting, we're going to be very lucky. You know,
Oh, yeah.
if we get everything done and can cancel a
And
meeting.
it might not be easier to get our experts, people that we want to ask questions of here on that.
Plus, we always have to consider the possibility that with any one of these, if we have bad weather, we have to cancel one.
Yep.
Wait, I got four-wheel drive.
The people watch it at home.
Yeah,
And oh, by the way,
the issue of opening.
that whole idea of controlled chaos, of having people say, would you ask this question, please, but not getting up there and going on and on, we can do that on the live stream as well.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can have people say, please ask about this, you know.
Okay.
And I want to limit it to please ask about this rather than I don't agree with you, you know, because that would just add 3 hours.
Because we know.
Because there's always going to be somebody that's not going to agree with it.
Okay. All right.
And
Jamie, thank you for all the hard work in putting together these meetings, and thank Diane for all of her hard work in putting them together.
well, and I want to before we.
Oh,
I want to make a motion. I move that
Okay.
we postpone the listening tour
Jennifer,
into a
are we
later
still-
time.
We're still rolling?
When the
So it's
time
his-
will be more
your start.
appropriate for discussing a wide range of issues.
okay.
Second.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Just because I think, because there was some publicity on doing it, I think we need to make a stand that we're gonna, we're not doing it, we're just gonna postpone it until a later time.
Yep.
Is that a motion?
It was a motion, and there
And it was
was seconded.
seconded.
Second.
Discussion?
Voting.
Nope. All in favor?
Yep.
Okay, we will do it at a later time.
Toboggans.
Oh,
Holy smokes, we're not done?
No, we've got wastewater after this too.
I just wanted to bring you up to date. Camden wants to use ringers.
Yeah, they
want
do.
to open it up to town employees. And this was a select board to select
Yeah, it
board
was.
challenge.
Yeah, it was.
So, we're gonna be discussing it come Thursday, but, you know, we need to know what our, you know, I think we wanna, you know, give some consideration. Do we want to insist that they have a certain number of their select board on that team?
is wimp a four-letter word? Can we use that in a meeting?
My feeling is, you know what, we won it last year, if they feel they have to have ringers to win it this year, let's do it.
They had ringers last year.
Yeah,
too,
they
and
had
they
Steve
lost.
Bixley.
But if they need ringers, then I don't care.
Plus, it gives you a built-in excuse. If something happens and it goes wrong, you just blame it.
I
that
think
they
that
had
we
ringers.
kicked much bottom, and I
did.
think we should just roll with it as a board again. And if they want to be Camden, they can be Camden.
Okay.
I don't.
For a
I
while,
have
you held
spoke-
the record on the hill.
Yeah, I have spoken to Tom Cox. He is working to get us a toboggan.
Yeah.
And I assured him, you know, he said we may have to share with somebody else. I said, so long as we get the first ride.
It's not the fire department.
Yeah, exactly.
Last year.
I still have my Andre hat.
You were supposed to
that's
turn
right,
that
too.
in.
Oh, my kids play with it.
Yeah, the hat.
I have
Not
the
your
sweatshirt.
helmet, just
the
the
hat.
cover, not the
Oh.
helmet. I
Yeah,
gave
I
you your
turned
helmet
mine in,
back.
I thought.
No, I didn't get the Andre, the seal piece.
All
back.
right, it's
I got the
10:30.
helmet.
Yep, okay,
Yep.
let's go on. I'll entertain a motion to go in as wastewater commissioners.
So move.
Second.
Yeah,
Moving second, all in favor? Yep. Okay, we're wastewater commissioners.
Move to commit the October 2016 wastewater user debt fees totaling $30,249.03 to the treasurer for collections.
Second.
I already did. I double checked all those numbers before, well, when I read it online. It's been moved. Did somebody second it?
Jeff did, yeah.
Okay. All in favor? That is there. The other one, we do not have the November yet, so we will just automatically have that tabled to the 23rd. I'd entertain a motion to exit.
Second.
No, you
So
gotta
moved.
move.
Whatever.
Move to exit it as wastewater and re-enter as select board.
Yep.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Yep.
The only thing I want to remind everybody of is the cemetery committee is to be presenting on the 23rd, and the investment committee on February 13th. We will give our full liaison reports next month, our next meeting, the 23rd, in 2 weeks. What I've asked Rick to do is only give us those critical updates that we have to be made aware of that can't wait until February 13th.
Critical. I don't want to hear anything about your dog.
No,
And I hope we don't have to hear anything about Summer Street. So,
I'm stealing your
I
job.
have no further business.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Move seconded. Non-debatable. All in favor?
In favor.
We are adjourned.